It was just after midnight on a Friday night. My husband was absorbed in an online game in the living room while I sat at the dining table, working on some tasks I had brought home. Out of nowhere, he casually suggested we should live apart. Startled, I asked him why. Although we hadn't been getting along well lately, I felt I deserved to hear his reasons. My name is Megan. At the stroke of midnight, as I turned 35, my husband, fully aware of my ongoing infertility treatments, dropped a bombshell. I was so taken aback that my mind went blank. Without tearing his eyes away from the screen, he said, "You just turned 35, right? Even if you got pregnant now, it would be a high-risk pregnancy. So, I've decided to give up on having kids with you. That's why I want to live separately and move in with my mom." What? I don't understand. I was baffled as to why giving up on having kids meant he wanted to live apart from me and move in with his mother. We got married 2 years ago. While I wanted to enjoy our newlywed life for a while, my husband was eager to start a family. As the youngest of 3 brothers, each with 3 kids, he was constantly reminded by his siblings, it's best to have kids while you're still young and energetic. So, we decided to try for a baby. However, a year passed and we were still not blessed with a child. One day, my husband said, "You should get checked out." For what? Why? I asked, taken aback. "We can't have a kid. There must be something wrong with you," he yelled. Although his accusation upset me, I decided to visit the gynecologist just in case. The results revealed that I did have a condition that made it difficult to conceive. Without any symptoms, this news was a huge shock. The gynecologist explained that while it would be challenging, natural pregnancy was still possible. Despite this, I felt a heavy weight on my heart as I prepared to tell my husband. That evening, over dinner, I calmly shared the results with him. He seemed almost triumphant as he said, "I knew it was you. But the doctor said I could still get pregnant," I muttered. He glared at me and declared, "It's been impossible, and it's not going to change." His unilateral conclusion filled me with anger. "You could have an issue too, you know," I retorted. That struck a nerve, causing him to raise his voice. "Megan, it's obvious what the problem is here. How dare you try to blame me?" With a resounding bang, he slammed his fists on the table in frustration. I recoiled in surprise. "You're just a failure. Can't even conceive a child." With that cutting remark, he stormed off to the bedroom. Left alone, tears streamed down my face as I washed dishes. I knew he was reacting out of shock and frustration. If only we could conceive, maybe then we could find happiness together again. With determination, I resolved to redouble my efforts to conceive and regain my husband's love. Regular visits to the gynecologist became routine, but with each visit, my anxiety mounted. Despite focusing intensely on my most fertile days, success eluded me, fueling my stubborn resolve. One morning, I ventured, "Let's try again tonight, okay?" To my surprise, he met my suggestion with disapproval. "Isn't it a bit awkward to talk about tonight so early in the morning?" Embarrassment flushed my cheeks. Reflecting on it, I realized it might seem strange, but we were a couple. It should feel natural. Suppressing my mixed emotions, I tried gently persuading him. "Don't you want a child too?" But my husband shot back, "I never really wanted a child. It's too expensive. My brothers always said a real man has a wife and kids, so I thought I'd give it a shot. But now that it's not happening because of you, I have a respectable excuse not to care anymore." From then on, whenever I approached my husband, he would dismiss me with excuses like, "I'm busy" or "I'm tired." Yet I was just as busy and exhausted from work. Each rejection shattered my pride as a woman. Lately, my husband had become engrossed in online gaming, staying up late into the night. Our intimate life had faded, and even our daily conversations had dwindled to almost nothing. It seemed my husband had lost interest not only in having children but in me as well. Despite this, I persisted in visiting the gynecologist. During my infertility treatments, I was struck by the number of couples at the clinic. It specialized in infertility, always packed with patients. Waiting 2 to 3 hours, even with an appointment, was normal. Seeing so many others struggling with the same issue gave me a strange comfort. Sometimes I would witness a couple emerging from a consultation room, the woman tenderly touching her still flat belly, her husband by her side. Perhaps they had just received news of a pregnancy. I longed for that to be me. I wanted a child desperately. I wanted to regain my husband's love and find happiness again. My hope for a child began to dim when I was told that further treatment would be difficult without my husband undergoing testing. I found myself at a crossroads, unsure of what to do next. Maybe it was all impossible after all. The journey home from the gynecology clinic always left me with a painful ache, threatening tears. As I stepped onto the main road, I glanced up and was startled by the sight of an elderly woman in flamboyant attire. The surprise halted my tears. She appeared to be in her 70s, with thick makeup and a boldly colorful dress that clashed with her surroundings. I didn't recognize her at first, but there was something oddly familiar about her. Could it be my mother-in-law? Despite living in the same city, we seldom crossed paths, and this woman bore no resemblance to the modest image I recalled. Yet the distinctive mole on her cheek left me certain. My mother-in-law had undergone a dramatic transformation contrary to her usual simple appearance, and it caught me off guard. I faded into the crowd, silently observing. My mother-in-law was a force of nature. She held herself to lenient standards while scrutinizing others with harsh judgment, hurling insults that could leave anyone speechless. She favored my husband, her youngest, with unabashed affection, contrasting sharply with her treatment of her other children, whom she often dismissed as mere financial burdens. This disparity fueled resentment, especially from my brother-in-law. Last year, when my father-in-law succumbed to cancer, discussions arose about her moving in with one of her children. Both her eldest and second sons, along with their families, vehemently refused. I assumed the responsibility would fall to us, but she asserted her independence, declaring she would live alone as long as she remained healthy. Whether fueled by bitterness over being rejected or her innate character, her reaction to my father-in-law's passing was explosive. She publicly accused her sons of ingratitude, accusing them of financial exploitation, and claimed the lion's share of inheritance without considering an equitable division. Despite numerous attempts by my husband and brother-in-law to suggest dividing the inheritance according to legal guidelines, she remained steadfast, refusing to yield, and no one could sway her. Even I received a cold dismissal from her with words like, "I have no interest in getting along with you, so stay away from my house." Compared to the fiery conflicts between her and my brother-in-law and their wives, I found myself in a relatively peaceful position. One day, I spotted my mother-in-law disappearing into a shop without noticing me. I couldn't reconcile this with the woman I knew, and I found myself staring at the signboard of the building she had entered. That night, I debated whether to tell my husband about his mother's actions, but ultimately decided against it. After all, she was an adult, now single without my father-in-law, and entitled to her personal choices. It wasn't my place to criticize her interests or decisions. Since then, I've caught glimpses of her a few times but always pretended not to notice. Months passed, and as my birthday approached, my husband suddenly proposed that we live separately. Curious and somewhat suspicious, I asked him, "Have you met someone else?" I couldn't help but wonder if my mother-in-law was just an excuse and if he might be planning to remarry. Yet he seemed to spend most of his days at home absorbed in video games, making it unlikely that he was seeing anyone else. I mulled over the possibilities in my mind. Strangely, I felt oddly calm, almost on the verge of laughter. My husband, on his part, responded seriously, "Well, there's this girl in my gaming group who I find interesting, but it's all online. It could just as well be a guy pretending to be a woman, which makes the whole thing rather absurd. He's rational enough to make decisions, so why would he suddenly suggest separation? I just don't understand," I thought to myself as my husband reiterated, "I just prefer living with my mom over living with you." Confusion and hurt filled me. Why would he choose his mother over me? Do you resent me? Has our love vanished? I searched desperately for answers that could soothe my heart and posed my next question to him. As soon as the words escaped my lips, a pang of pain shot through my chest. Did he no longer need me, the woman unable to bear a child due to infertility? Holding back tears, I awaited his response. "No, not really." "Huh?" My husband's response catches me off guard. "Didn't I mention this before? I'm not focused on having kids anymore. We need to find another way to secure our finances." "Money?" I echo his unexpected words. He nods solemnly and explains, "It's about my mom's inheritance." I struggle to see the connection and feel increasingly perplexed. My brothers are opportunistic. They'll try to claim a larger share of mom's inheritance by arguing they have more children. I won't let that happen. Who's being opportunistic here? I'm taken aback but choose to hold my tongue. "But your mom is perfectly healthy. Isn't it premature to discuss her inheritance?" "That's why my mom dislikes you, but she dotes on me. If I move in with her now, it'll be advantageous for securing the inheritance. She likely has a significant portion of my dad's estate stashed away for herself, so I won't have to work hard and can live comfortably. With no children of our own, we need financial security for our old age, my husband explained, his tone almost mocking. I grasped the implication and was stunned. So the reason my husband had wanted a child was. So you wanted a child to ensure someone would care for you in old age. And since that's not possible, you're now aiming for a larger share of your mom's inheritance. I hoped my suspicions were mistaken. I confronted my husband, hoping for a different response, but once again, he dashed my expectations. Of course, he declared, children are meant to care for their parents. If I move in with mom now, I might secure the entire inheritance. The strong bond between Tom and his mother suddenly made sense to me. It seemed to overshadow everything else. There was no hint of fairness or sharing in his words. I was left speechless as Tom continued, almost monologuing now. Once mom passes, I'll return to live with you. While you can't have children, you manage the household impeccably and bring home a good paycheck as a full-time worker. All right, then let's get a divorce, my true feelings burst out, cutting him off. Who would tolerate such treatment, agree to live apart, and then reconcile as if nothing happened? Tom was making a mockery of me. I knew his position as the youngest of three had spoiled him, but this selfish scheme of his was beyond unacceptable and reprehensible. In that moment, all the love I once felt for Tom vanished completely. Let's hire a lawyer to fairly divide our assets and go our separate ways. Huh? Divorce? I never mentioned divorce. We can simply live apart. Hiring a lawyer seems excessive. Although Tom appeared taken aback at first, my resolve seemed to sway him. No, you'll feel better being single too. I won't be satisfied unless we divide everything equitably through legal means. Bringing in a third party to handle the assets will prevent any future issues, right? Tom smirked smugly and relented. You make a fair point. All right, if I secure a good share of mom's inheritance, my retirement will be comfortable, and I might even consider remarrying. Just make sure you don't regret it, I replied pointedly. Likewise, don't count your chickens before they hatch, he retorted, and be sure you won't regret your decisions. The following day, I received a lawyer recommendation from a friend who had been through a divorce and promptly sought consultation. I also informed our landlord that only Tom would be vacating the premises and arranged for movers. As I made these arrangements, I overheard Tom on the phone with his mother, expressing his desire to live with her and fulfill his duties as a son. It shocked me to realize he had proposed separation to me without first seeking his mother's approval. According to Tom, his mother was thrilled about the prospect of living with him. It seemed she had certain requests or things to discuss with him. Surprisingly, preparations for the divorce progressed swiftly. Initially planning for a 50-50 asset split, my skilled lawyer managed to negotiate alimony, securing 70% of the assets for me. If Tom's selfish actions led to our separation, I felt justified in claiming the share. Without hesitation, just 3 days after finalizing the divorce and with Tom returning to his parents' home, I was relaxing in my apartment when my phone rang. It was my ex-husband, Tom. The moment I answered, he pleaded, "Please help me, let's get married again," he sobbed. There was no inheritance after all. My mom squandered everything on male strippers. She's broke now. What's worse, she's buried in debts and has even mortgaged her house. Oh, really? That's rough. Sounds like your mom has a thing for those strip clubs, huh? I chuckled softly. I had witnessed my ex-mother-in-law frequenting those establishments, their exorbitant prices boldly displayed on billboards. I'd seen her enter several times, unmistakably spending a small fortune there. Since Tom became engrossed in online gaming and stopped visiting his parents, his mother seemed to have fallen into this nightlife scene. She depleted her late husband's inheritance and her retirement savings, now drowning in debt from numerous loans. Why didn't you tell me about this? I didn't see it as my place to interfere in people's hobbies. I never stopped you from playing video games, did I? Tom was momentarily speechless and swiftly changed the subject. She's been pressuring me to take out loans in my name. But that's impossible. Can't you give me some money from the divorce settlement? If we were still married, it would be our money. No, I responded firmly. Why not? You used to love me, didn't you? Your husband is in trouble. I loved you when we were married, but once you suggested separating, all those feelings vanished. It's clear now that you're only interested in my money. Why would I consider getting back together with you? That's not fair. Mom is demanding my entire paycheck. She insists it's only right for a child to support their parents. She was always good to me. Tom whimpered pitifully, but his expectation that he should always be the center of attention and that everyone else should cater to him mirrored his mother's attitude. They truly were two of a kind. They brought this situation upon themselves, and I felt no obligation to offer assistance. We're divorced now, Tom. We're strangers. Please handle your family's issues on your own, I said calmly, flashing a reassuring smile. I ended the call and blocked his number. Then I promptly dialed each of my former brothers-in-law. Although I had planned to update them once things settled down after the divorce, it seemed prudent to inform them sooner rather than later. I recounted everything Tom had disclosed about his mother and the events leading to our separation. My ex-brothers-in-law expressed sympathy and assured me they would confront Tom about his actions. Later, I received word from one of them that Tom's brothers had paid a visit to their parents' home, resulting in quite a scene. Hearing this, I decided to change my door locks as a precaution and ultimately made the decision to move. Cutting ties completely seemed best. While browsing real estate listings, I came across a listing for Tom's parents' house being put up for sale. Curious about Tom and his mother's fate, I briefly considered asking my former brothers-in-law for updates but ultimately decided to focus on moving forward and severing all connections with the past. I plan to move to a pet-friendly apartment and relish a peaceful, carefree life, possibly with a charming feline companion.
Do you know someone like this? When in front of a man they like, or someone they want to impress, their tone of voice rises, and they casually say things that aren't true to their feelings. This phenomenon, often referred to as acting like a different person, can seem like a sign of affection. However, when it involves turning the tables depending on the situation or person, it's a different story. Such behavior always ends up harming someone else. The story I'm about to tell is about the time I was personally affected by this behavior. My name is Lucy. 7 years ago, my boyfriend of 3 years, Ben, and I were discussing getting married in the fall. Around the same time, we learned that his older brother was also planning to get married. It's joyful when happy events coincide. But considering the financial burden on those invited, we thought it best to avoid having our weddings at the same time. After discussing it, it was decided that his older brother, being the eldest, would have his wedding first. And the person who became my sister-in-law was Nicole. Nicole was a very kind person and treated me like a little sister. Even though I was 2 years younger, I thought we could get along well as sisters-in-law after getting married. However, Nicole's attitude changed completely 6 months after her marriage. This happened on the day my husband and I, who had our wedding later than the brothers couple, returned from our domestic honeymoon and visited the family home. Grandma, Ben, and Lucy are back from their honeymoon. When the mother-in-law called out loudly, out came the 80-year-old grandmother, who lives with the parents-in-law. Ben, Lucy, welcome back. I bought your favorite sweets, I told my grandmother-in-law, who also loves sweets as much as I do. Ben, you really got yourself a wonderful bride. You even considered me an old lady during your wedding. It was a solemn ceremony with just family, and even the meal was formal cuisine. It's rare for young people these days. We were enjoying a family gathering at the in-laws' house for the first time after the marriage when the doorbell rang. It was Nicole. Oh, it looks like everyone is having a good time. Nicole, you came at just the right time. Ben and the others have just brought back some souvenirs from their honeymoon. Why don't you join us for some sweets? The mother-in-law invited her, but Nicole replied, I'll pass. I only came to bring an invitation for mother-in-law's birthday party. I have other things to do, so I'll be taking my leave. With that, she left through the front door. I followed her. Here, these are some souvenirs. I'm sorry they're so ordinary. As I handed her the bag of sweets, she peeked inside and laughed. Well, yeah, I guess you could buy something like this at any store around here. I'm sorry. And Lucy, could you stop calling me by my name from now on? You're married now, so you should understand that much, right? Yes. Nicole, who had always called me affectionately, was now using a formal tone. What had happened? I wondered if I had upset her somehow. But I couldn't think of anything. Maybe she was just in a bad mood. Only a vague feeling of discomfort remained. 2 weeks later, at a restaurant booked by Nicole for the mother-in-law's birthday. My grandmother-in-law and the brother and his wife were waiting. Huh? I wondered why my grandmother-in-law wasn't there when Nicole interrupted. Now that everyone is here, Father, could you please say a few words for the toast? After we finished the main course and it was time for dessert, Nicole said. Mother. This is a birthday present from Jeff and me. The mother-in-law opened the box handed to her by Nicole, revealing a bag with a luxury brand logo. Oh. Should I really accept such an expensive item? I thought it suited our stylish mother-in-law perfectly. Nicole, who had also given a watch to the father-in-law 3 months earlier, looked satisfied as the mother-in-law rejoiced. Lucy, you've prepared something too, right? Yes. I'm embarrassed after such expensive gifts from you both. And as the mother-in-law opened the package I handed her. Oh, how lovely. Is this handmade by you, Lucy? Yes, I like sewing. I had gifted a hand-sewn apron. I remembered the mother-in-law once saying she wished for a more stylish apron, so I made one to suit her taste. Thank you. I really wanted something like this. More than anything. I'm happy you made it by hand, the mother-in-law said joyfully. Nicole, nodding along, said, Lucy, you really are skilled with your hands, I'm envious. Teach me sometime, with a smile. Worried that my handmade gift might be a burden. I was relieved to hear their words and went to the restroom. While washing my hands, I felt someone's gaze and looked up to see Nicole glaring at me through the mirror. Is it really that surprising? I'm sorry, I didn't notice you. Hey, Lucy, what about that birthday present? Did you really think mother-in-law would be happy with something like that? Handmade aprons are like something from a grade school home economics class. So tacky. Nicole laughed condescendingly while crossing her arms, looking down on me. Ah, yuck yuck, being around you makes me feel poor. Saying that, she pinched her nose as if smelling something foul and left the bathroom. Since then, Nicole has acted completely differently when family is around. And when it's just the two of us. Even when I consulted my husband, he just said to ignore her, but he wasn't taking it seriously. Still, I continued visiting the family home, looking forward to seeing my grandmother-in-law, who always seemed happy to see me. Recently, I haven't run into Nicole, and I've felt relieved. Then one day, I have something to report. Came a message from Nicole after a long time. When I went to the family home on the appointed day, there were my grandmother-in-law and Nicole, who had come alone, chatting happily. Nicole is pregnant with a boy, the joyful mother-in-law said. My grandmother-in-law already knew about Nicole's pregnancy. But now that she was in a stable period, she had called us, the couple, to tell us in person. While my grandmother-in-law was overjoyed, I felt complicated emotions and pretended to make coffee to go to the kitchen. Yet, I couldn't help but listen to the living room conversation. Actually, there's something I'd like to ask. What is it? Don't hesitate, just say it. Jeff and I were talking, and we were thinking, once the baby is born, if we could live together in this house. And we were thinking, if the family grows, it might get a bit cramped, so it would help if we could remodel. Oh, of course, we'll pay for it, Nicole proposed modestly. After seeing Nicole's behavior, I felt there must be another motive behind her actions. Oblivious to such concerns, the father-in-law appreciated her sentiment, but mentioned, "It's kind of you to say, but living together might make us too cautious around each other. Don't worry about us, why don't you build your own house? I'd gladly help with the money, right, mother?" "Yes," replied the mother-in-law. Upon hearing this, Nicole, seemingly shocked, responded, "Really? Are you sure? But it's a shame. I was looking forward to living together." This seemed to be part of Nicole's planned scenario. Then, Nicole came over to where I was in the kitchen and said with a smirk, "You heard that, right? Father's going to fund my dream house." Seemingly reassured by something, she casually mentioned that she never intended to live with my grandmother-in-law from the start. "With this, my future is secure. After all, with a husband who works at a top company, a new house, and a son on the way, and, as a bonus, I've got my grandmother-in-law on my side." "You're pitiful for picking the wrong side." "What? I mean that old lady. What's the point in getting along with someone like her?" I couldn't hold back anymore and raised my voice. "Sister, that's not a nice way to speak. Shoo. If you speak so loudly, everyone will hear." Nicole then whispered in my ear, "God is watching us closely. After all, he made sure I, the eldest son's wife, could have a child first." I didn't understand Nicole's words immediately, but soon realized something. But why would Nicole know about that? It was supposed to be a secret known only to my husband and grandmother-in-law. Suddenly, my grandmother-in-law appeared. "What are you two talking about?" "Oh, nothing at all," Nicole responded with a fake smile, and quickly returned to the living room. "Lucy, would you like to have some coffee in my room?" Once we were inside, my grandmother-in-law made sure no one was outside. Before speaking, "Lucy, did that Nicole say something mean to you?" Grandma." My grandmother-in-law had begun to suspect Nicole's true nature, and shared her thoughts with me. When I revealed that Nicole knew about my miscarriage, my grandmother-in-law said, "She must have been eavesdropping on us talking in this room." I had intended to keep my pregnancy secret until a stable period due to fears of Nicole's potential actions, telling only my husband and grandmother-in-law. Unfortunately, I miscarried. Nicole, having called me to the family home to announce her pregnancy, seemed to be mocking me. I couldn't forgive her. Out of consideration for my elderly grandmother-in-law, I had not spoken of Nicole's past behavior, but I confessed everything to her. Holding my hand, my grandmother-in-law reassured, "It's okay, Lucy. Leave the rest to this old lady." She smiled. Months later, Nicole reached full term and safely delivered a boy at a hospital near her parents' home. While we gave a monetary gift to my brother-in-law, I separately sent a congratulatory gift to Nicole's family home. Despite it surely having arrived, there was no response. In front of my grandmother-in-law and parents-in-laws, I decided to call Nicole. "What? Are you calling to prompt a thank you? Sending such cheap homemade baby clothes? How stingy can you be?" Nicole began loudly as soon as she answered. I switched the call to speaker mode. "I've already thrown that stuff in the trash. Send a stroller instead." After letting Nicole finish, I revealed the truth. Sister, did you look inside? That was from Dad. What? Indeed, I made the baby clothes, but my father-in-law asked me to. He and mother-in-law embroidered the baby's name on the chest. Didn't you read the letter I put inside? What? No way, you're joking. Nicole's voice faded as she realized her mistake. Lucy, could you hold on a second? From the other side of the phone, I could hear her speaking. Hey, Mom. Where did you put that bag I threw in the trash? What bag? What was in it? Arg. You should have at least checked the contents. Although Nicole might have thought she was covering her phone, I could clearly hear her conversation with her mother. Lucy, I'm sorry, there was a mix-up. Nicole's voice suddenly became timid. It seems my mom accidentally threw it away thinking it was trash. If in-laws knew about this, they'd be upset. As Nicole continued to make excuses, her ultimate request was clear. She wanted me to make the same baby clothes again. Lucy, I apologize for being harsh before. But I didn't mean any harm. So please, just this once, help me out. After all the harsh words she had dished out, and now that she was in a bind, Nicole was quick to change her tune. I understand. Considering their feelings, I'll fulfill your request just this time. I ended the call after responding. Do you see now? That's her true nature. My grandmother-in-law said to the parents-in-law who were listening. In fact, before giving birth, Nicole had missed my grandmother-in-law's birthday party, claiming she was unwell. At that time, my grandmother-in-law had revealed Nicole's true character to my grandmother-in-law and my brother-in-law. Can it really be that Nicole, my grandmother-in-law, initially doubtful, were now convinced by the content of the phone call? They were more than angry, they were flabbergasted. That a family-crafted gift was discarded in the trash. Having unexpectedly gained leverage over Nicole, I saw an opportunity to turn the tables. A month later, an unsuspecting Nicole came to the family home with her newborn and her husband. On this day of meeting their first grandchild, it wasn't the time to confront Nicole. We, the couple, greeted them as if nothing had happened. How cute. Does this mouth resemble me? These eyebrows are just like mine. Watching the overjoyed grandparents, who clearly adored their grandson, I thought to myself, so this is what it means to love someone so much that they become the apple of your eye. Thank you, Father, Mother, and Lucy, for the adorable baby clothes. Look, they fit perfectly. Nicole wore a smug expression as she dressed her baby in the newly made clothes. Really, they fit perfectly, she said, smiling at me as the grandparents beamed with joy. But then, huh? That's strange. The mother-in-law murmured, looking intently at her grandchild with a puzzled expression. Is there something odd? These baby clothes. I'm sure the embroidery wasn't this neat before. Or is it just my imagination, she wondered, tilting her head. Yes, Mother. They were beautifully sewn from the start. Right, of course. Ha ha ha. Thinking she got away with it, Nicole relaxed. But then, let me hold my great-grandchild, said my grandmother-in-law, reaching for the child. Don't touch with dirty hands. Nicole swatted my grandmother-in-law's hands away, a reflexive action betraying her disdain. Oh, Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that, not like that. Nicole tried desperately to explain herself, but the icy stares from everyone around her were unforgiving. Well, it's okay, my grandmother-in-law chuckled alone. Even if you try to cover it up. The truth comes out when you least expect it, right, Nicole? What? Oh. My bad, I might have said too much. My grandmother-in-law's sarcastically tinged reply left Nicole at a loss. Cornered, Nicole then said, Grandma, could we maybe have another birthday party? I was unwell last time and couldn't attend. Ah, there it is. The classic backpedal. Shall I book a traditional restaurant since you like French cuisine? Nicole approached, rubbing her hands together. No, I dislike eating out. I'd rather try Nicole's homemade cooking instead. What? Is cooking not your strong suit, Nicole? No, not at all. I'll certainly make it. Despite her bravado at that moment, Nicole later called asking for help with the cooking. Just like with the baby clothes. She assumed I would bail her out, but that's not how it works. Sorry, sister, but I can't help with that request. Grandma has tasted my cooking before, so she'll notice right away. If you can't cook, why not just be honest about it? What? Perhaps resigning herself to my unexpected stance. Nicole muttered, all right, and hung up. Then, during the redo of my grandmother-in-law's birthday party, lavish platters and elaborate dishes lined the table. Did Nicole make all this herself? My grandmother-in-law asked innocently. Yes. I'm not sure if it'll be to your taste though. Typical of Nicole, unable to admit her lack of culinary skills at this point. She likely ordered high-end dishes and transferred them to her own serving ware. Relieved to have avoided embarrassment, Nicole then offered a gift to my grandmother-in-law. Grandma, it's nothing much, but please accept this. Oh. Such a fancy outfit. But it's too nice for me to wear. I hate to ask, but could you return it to the store? What? Didn't you like it? I can get you something else. As Nicole scrambled to deal with the returned gift, my grandmother-in-law struck. Nicole, why don't you come live with us? That would be the best present. What? That way, I can enjoy your delicious meals every day. Huh? Living together? I thought we agreed that wasn't necessary, right, father-in-law? Nicole was visibly shaken by my grandmother-in-law's unexpected proposal. I just thought of it now, and Nicole, you were planning to live with us. Weren't you? Is there a problem? After about 10 seconds of silence, Nicole finally spoke. I'm sorry. I actually can't cook at all. But I couldn't refuse Grandma's request. So I ordered the food and brought it here. That's what I thought. You should have just been honest from the start. Yes, I'm sorry. Nicole apologized for the cooking mishap, trying to dodge the living arrangement issue, but my grandmother-in-law pressed on. Don't worry. The living together was just a joke, a joke. What? It was a joke? A slight sense of relief returned to Nicole's face. But my grandmother-in-law's next move was unexpected. Listen to the end. You're too quick to rejoice. What? I'd like you not to cross this house's threshold again. Since you can't come in, living together is out of the question, right? What? Then Nicole's husband, who had been quiet, spoke up. Nicole, you need to apologize to Lucy. To throw away the clothes she made for the child. What you did was the lowest of the low, both as a person and as a mother. It was the first time I saw my usually quiet brother-in-law angry. Apologize? But I didn't do anything wrong. Nicole still refused to admit her actions. Now it was my turn to deliver the final blow. Sister, everything's been exposed. Do you want to see the proof? I showed her my phone. Here, our conversation has been recorded. Would you like to listen? When I tried to press the button on my smartphone. Stop it! Nicole shouted loudly and snatched the phone from my hands. Mule, mule. Startled by Nicole's voice, the child sleeping in the next room started crying loudly. What, everyone's ganging up on me. I'm the one who feels like crying. Wah! What? Really? Now Nicole started crying like a child too, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Nicole, enough already. Aren't you embarrassed by such childish antics? Just leave already. Silenced as if by a command, the room fell quiet with the brother-in-law's stern words. Nicole couldn't say anything back and left the family home. This marked the end of pretender Nicole's flip-flopping, as her husband had had enough. Afterward, Nicole, now formally divorced and jobless without savings, tried to demand compensation in exchange for giving custody to the brother-in-law. However, Nicole's parents, being reasonable, apologized profusely for their daughter's actions and offered to pay compensation themselves. Nicole was taken back to her parents' home, and although she frequently sent messages to her ex-husband, she only complained about how the wife of the brother she lives with now is too assertive, and I can't stand living with her. Disgusted by Nicole's lack of concern for her child, the brother-in-law responded, "You brought this upon yourself," and blocked her on Messenger, setting his phone to reject her calls. The brother-in-law, who had been living with his son at his parents' home, soon remarried. "Please call me by my name, not as your sister-in-law," said the new sister-in-law, a year older and much kinder and cheerful than Nicole, quickly endearing herself to her nephew. With the grandparents' blessing, they now live in an apartment close to the family home. Meanwhile, blessed with 2 daughters, we moved into the family home as my brother-in-law's family moved out. Although the grandparents initially said living together was unnecessary, they now delight in watching their grandchildren grow up close by. The names of the 2 daughters were given by my grandmother-in-law. The girls affectionately call their great-grandmother Gigi, who is celebrating her milestone birthday this year. Today, as always, she sits on the porch, watching her great-grandchildren play in the sandbox. "Gigi, here's some sweets," the girls say, offering mud pies they made. "Thank you, they're delicious," the great-grandmother laughs, her wrinkles deepening with her smile. Watching this endearing scene from the shadows, I whispered, "Gigi, please live a long life and continue watching over these children's growth." Michelle, I didn't tell you, but from tomorrow, my parents will be living with us too. Living together without even discussing it? This house was bought by Richard, but isn't that a bit strange? Discussion isn't necessary. Living together is a settled matter. If you can't comply, then sleep outside, got it? On the day we moved into the house with a yard, Richard casually made this declaration. Looking down on his wife, he dumped all the troublesome matters onto me, including the care of his parents. Even the house hunting had been entirely left to me. Normally, one would lose their composure in such a situation. But I responded to him as if it were just a matter of business communication. "Okay, I'll sleep in the garden tonight, but don't regret whoever you sleep with, okay?" "Whoever I sleep with? What are you talking about? Are you cheating on me?" "Well, I don't mind, do whatever you want. Just don't come back into the house halfway through." At that moment, I smirked without my husband seeing. It was a certain thing that he would regret. I knew everything. The next day was a beautiful, cool, and pleasant morning. When Richard came to the garden, he looked puzzled, not just because I was sleeping in a sleeping bag, but also because a large tent was set up next to me. "What are you doing? Did you seriously sleep outside? What about it?" "You told me to sleep outside, Richard. But actually, it wasn't too bad with the camping sleeping bag and tent." "Why do you have a sleeping bag and tent? Did you even have time to prepare that?" In response to my husband's questioning, I could only return a mischievous smile. He seemed to realize something was off about my behavior, but he couldn't grasp the full extent of it. Truly, he was a fool. I had been preparing for this moment long before, and my preparations were not limited to just the sleeping bag and tent. There was no way my husband, who looked down on me, could ever have anticipated the extent of my planning. "Well, whatever. Hurry up and clean this up and prepare the food. It's embarrassing to have my wife sleeping outside in the garden." He had told me to sleep outside himself. Yet, he ridiculed me with a sarcastic laugh. But I didn't change my expression, because my counterattack had already begun and would end today. Richard muttered complaints with a twisted smile as he walked towards the new house. That's when the in-laws arrived at the new home. They too had a puzzled look upon seeing the garden state. Whether they knew the situation or not, it was undeniably an odd scene. Feeling sorry before my kind in-laws, I had to expose Richard's true nature. I couldn't let him deceive them too. As I greeted my in-laws, they approached me with a confused look to understand the situation. "Michelle, were you really sleeping in the garden?" I was surprised to see the sleeping bag and tent. Was it because it was the first day of moving? Did something happen with Richard? It was natural for the in-laws to be curious. As I pondered where to start explaining, Richard interjected. "Michelle wanted to sleep in the garden. She's into camping, you know. It's troublesome, especially right after moving. But I can understand, the backyard is spacious and seems good for a barbecue." With a calm demeanor as if nothing had happened, Richard lied. His natural act was so convincing that the in-laws quietly accepted his words. This is how he continued to deceive them, all to torment me and hide a significant secret. While puzzled, the in-laws still smiled at me and went inside the new house. "Hey Michelle, just a heads up, don't say anything unnecessary to my parents. Just stay quiet and follow my lead as usual. That's your role, understand? Now clean this up and get ready to make the food. Don't forget to take care of my parents." When the in-laws were out of sight, Richard reverted to his usual commanding tone. Normally, I would have complied, but today was different. Seizing the opportunity for retaliation, I quickly responded. "Understood, I'll prepare for 5 people. We have a very important guest today." "Huh? It's just you and me here. What nonsensical thing are you talking about? Don't irritate me first thing in the morning. This is why useless wives." Richard grumbled as he headed towards the new house. At that moment, I slowly pointed to a certain place. Curious, Richard stopped and shifted his gaze. Shortly after, his eyes widened in shock. "Huh, why are you here? What is this all about?" "Hello, Richard. I've been waiting to talk to you." The man who appeared was Jason White, the department manager at the company where Richard worked. Richard was unable to hide his surprise, especially since Jason had emerged from the tent. It must have been an incomprehensible situation for him. For a few seconds, silence enveloped the area. Richard seemed to be choosing his words carefully but honestly asked Jason, "What did you want to talk about?" "Wait, are Michelle and you having an affair?" "Come to think of it, Michelle, you said yesterday not to regret whoever you slept with." "Huh? What are you talking about?" "There's no way that's the case. Mr. White arrived about 30 minutes ago. I also like camping." "Richard, I waited inside the tent until you woke up." "Arrived 30 minutes ago? So, did you overhear our conversation just now?" As if drained of blood, Richard's face paled. The conversation had been completely overheard by Jason. "I had heard from Michelle, but I didn't want to believe it until the end. That you were hiding your true nature and bullying your wife." Jason spoke slowly and calmly, but his words were tinged with anger towards Richard. Panic surged through Richard, and his body began to tremble slightly. "No, this is a misunderstanding, Mr. White. I just spoke a bit harshly, but it was never bullying." "Spoke a bit harshly? It didn't seem that way to me. Your words were clearly malicious and condescending. What has Michelle ever done to you?" Jason's anger intensified, and Richard's trembling grew. The attitude he had displayed while ridiculing me was nowhere to be found. He was like a frog being stared down by a snake, completely frozen. "I can't believe it, Richard. You do excellent work at the company. But to behave like this towards your wife. I'm frankly disappointed. I really didn't intend to bully my wife. I've been frustrated because work hasn't been going well recently. And I guess I took it out on her." Sweating profusely, Richard frantically scrambled for words to defend himself. As Jason had mentioned, Richard was highly regarded at work. Not only for his job performance, but also for his personality. If one did not know any better, it would be hard to believe he could bully his wife. However, Jason and I knew everything. They were aware that Richard had been deceiving those around him and hiding a significant fact. And today, Jason had come here in connection with that hidden fact. Quietly, Jason told Richard the name of a woman. "Anna Parker, you know her well, don't you, Richard? She's an employee at a client I'm in charge of." "Did something happen to her?" "She's my wife." At those words, Richard's eyes filled with surprise and confusion. And he struggled to find words. His face paled suddenly, and his eyes showed fear. Jason White looked at him with a cold gaze. Richard took a deep breath to calm himself and hesitantly began to speak. "Anna Parker is your wife, Mr. White?" "No way. But her surname is different, right?" "She's Anna Parker, isn't she?" "Anna uses her maiden name at work. It seems smoother for business as everyone is accustomed to her maiden name. There are several other women at her workplace who also use their maiden names." I didn't know anything. Anna never told me anything either." Richard was more desperate than ever, and there was a reason for his desperation. He had been having an affair with Anna, unaware that she was his boss's wife. Jason's visit to the house today was to discuss this affair. "When Michelle told me about your affair, I was truly shocked. That the other woman was my wife, no less. This isn't something that can just be overlooked. Well, before that, infidelity is inexcusable no matter who it involves. You were betraying Michelle." "Michelle told you? When? How long have you known?" "I've known for several months. It started when you began to act coldly towards me after finding out I was infertile." The trigger for Richard's bullying was the discovery of my infertility. I was undergoing infertility treatments. But Richard was not supportive and became increasingly colder, leaving me feeling isolated. One day, while he said he was going on a business trip, and I went out camping as a hobby, I accidentally witnessed him leaving for a romantic trip. That's when I decided to investigate his infidelity. As a result, I discovered that his affair was with his boss's wife. This fact ignited a desire for revenge within me. Amidst this, Richard brought up the idea of buying a house with a garden. His suggestion served as a catalyst for advancing my revenge plan. I monitored his actions and prepared a plan for revenge, leading up to today. Richard wanted children, right? That's why I was trying hard with the infertility treatments. But instead of supporting me, you stopped even listening to me. You discarded me and had an affair with Anna, didn't you? Richard, you just said you didn't intend to bully your wife. But it was premeditated, wasn't it? You were trying to drive her to divorce. Not telling her about living with your parents was also part of your harassment, wasn't it? That's not. With words filled with undeniable anger, Richard was left stammering. This hit the nail on the head. And both Jason and I glared at him with eyes full of disappointment and disdain. Richard's face turned pale as a sick person's, and his body trembled violently. Yet, he forced himself to speak, unable to admit the truth. I admit I've been harsh on Michelle. But the accusations of infidelity by Michelle and Mr. White are just baseless, aren't they? There's no proof. Michelle said I was on a romantic trip. But I just happened to run into Anna on a business trip. We had late meetings and went out for drinks because of work, but I wasn't unfaithful. I see, indeed there's no proof. We didn't prepare any. Right, Michelle? Yes, that's right. There's no proof. Or rather, it's not needed. But Richard, you definitely were unfaithful. Just admit it honestly and apologize to Mr. White first. Michelle, cut it out. I didn't cheat. If you want to make me admit it, show me proof. Just because you've got Mr. White on your side doesn't mean you can boss me around. Richard yelled at me, losing all composure. His ferocity shook the air around us. It was proof that he was cornered, with no more room to hide his true nature. Unaware that every excuse he made only tightened the noose around his neck. He was truly foolish. What's the matter, Richard? Why are you raising your voice so much? It was heard all the way inside the house. Ah, that man there, he's Mr. White, isn't he? I'm terribly sorry for causing such a commotion. Actually, I came here today to discuss the matter of Richard's infidelity. Jason spoke straightforwardly, causing the in-laws to be dumbfounded. Their mouths agape in shock. To them, Richard did not seem like a man who would cheat. So they couldn't immediately believe it. However, being seriously told by Richard's boss made it hard for them to simply deny it. Silence enveloped the surroundings. Then, after about 10 seconds, the father-in-law hesitantly asked Richard. Infidelity. Is it true, Richard? I can't believe Mr. White would come all the way to our house just to joke about it. But I can't comprehend it either. Explain it so that we can understand. Father, it's not true. This is a misunderstanding by Mr. White. He's accusing me of cheating without any proof. I absolutely did not cheat, so please rest assured. Richard was acting as usual. Maybe it was ingrained in him after years of practice. Even in such a situation, he smoothly lied. As the father-in-law fell silent in thought, the mother-in-law then asked me, Michelle, what on earth is going on? I don't understand anything. There was a sleeping bag and tent in the garden which I thought was strange. But is that related to Richard's cheating? Is Richard really cheating? Mother, I'm sorry to have shocked you. But what Mr. White is saying is true. Richard is having an affair. Moreover, his partner is Mrs. White. I will prove it now. After saying this, I pointed again to a certain place. Richard and the in-laws checked where I was pointing, which was the tent set up in the garden. They looked puzzled, but the next moment, they were about to witness a shocking scene. Everyone, I am truly sorry for the trouble I have caused. Emerging from the tent was Anna Parker, the wife of director Jason White and my husband's affair partner. In fact, Jason hadn't come alone, he was accompanied by Anna. This meant that Anna had been privy to the entire discussion all along. The in-laws, meeting Anna for the first time, were shocked to see an unfamiliar woman emerge from the tent. Meanwhile, my husband was utterly shaken to find his affair partner had been so close all this time. Richard, everything Michelle has said is correct. We don't even need proof because Anna herself has fully admitted to the affair. As a matter of fact, I do have evidence, but I chose not to present it. Having Anna confirm it was quicker, and I also wanted to see your reaction. Just as expected, you showed your true colors, without even realizing you were sealing your own fate. Can you still make excuses, I wonder? My own Anna here with me. Michelle, how thoroughly prepared are you? By the way, Anna, have you told them everything? To my husband's question, Anna simply nodded quietly. Once again, my husband's body began to tremble, and the color drained from his face. Father, mother, as I was saying earlier, I have been subjected to bullying by Richard. I was also not informed about this living arrangement. The sleeping bag and tent set up in the garden were at Richard's command. He deemed me useless because of my infertility and chose to have an affair with Anna. I don't understand. Richard, you told us that Michelle proposed living together. And that's why we bought the new house. Michelle wanted to repay us. She said that changing the environment might help with the fertility treatments. Are you saying that was all a lie? Michelle was supposed to be supported by you, right? Far from supporting her, you were planning to discard her. And you deceived us too, Richard. I can't believe it. Disappointment and anger from the in-laws finally made my husband apologize. I'm truly sorry. I was shocked to find out about Michelle's infertility. Having children and living with them was also my dream. If I couldn't have children with Michelle, I thought I might have to remarry someone else. That's when I met Anna, and I thought she could fulfill my dream. I didn't mean any harm. Richard revealed his innermost thoughts while trembling, finally understanding that excuses wouldn't work anymore. He continued to apologize. However, immediately after, his body flew through the air and hit the ground with a dull thud. An extremely furious father-in-law stood there, looking like he might burst a blood vessel at any moment. Michelle wanted children just as much as you did. Did you ever think about how she feels? Not being able to have them even though she wants to? Is Michelle your property? Do you throw her away when you don't need her anymore? What do you say, Richard? Answer me. For the first time, I saw my usually gentle father-in-law show such anger. But more than that, his expression was filled with sadness. It was unthinkable that his beloved son was doing such inhumane things behind his back, and still trying to justify them. I am not a parent yet, but if I imagine if it were my child, it would tear me apart. Michelle's mother also approached Richard lying on the ground, her face just as sad. I couldn't bear to let them continue being deceived, even though it hurt the in-laws. Richard, lying on the ground, turned his gaze to me. While looking into his eyes, I delivered the prepared words. Richard, I will divorce you and also demand compensation for the mental anguish you caused me. At the same time, I presented the already filled out divorce papers. Lying face down, Richard received them. All he could do now was accept everything and take responsibility. Yet, Richard made an unbelievable move even now. Father is right. Michelle is my property. I'm discarding her because she's no longer needed. And just to make it clear, it's not my fault. It's all Michelle's fault. If I had known about the infertility, I would never have married her. Finding out after getting married is almost like fraud. What compensation? You, being infertile, should be the one paying. Richard crumpled the divorce papers and threw them at my face. The papers hit my cheek and rolled on the ground. You, how dare you? Don't mess with me. Once again, the father-in-law grabbed Richard by the collar. He looked ready to beat him up, but I stopped him. Michelle, why stop? This can't be allowed. We shouldn't let him do whatever he wants. Yes, Father. I feel the same way. I have no intention of forgiving him. But your health is more important. I can't let you get hurt. Besides, Richard isn't even worth hitting now. Please leave the rest to me. My calm demeanor made the father-in-law quietly let go of Richard. I took a deep breath, then pulled out a piece of paper and told Richard. Infertility is all my fault? I should pay the compensation? Can you still say the same after seeing this? Richard was speechless as he received the paper. It contained results he had never anticipated. What, this is a lie. What is this? I'm infertile? I can't have children? Yes, the cause of the infertility was not me but Richard. I had asked him to just provide a sample for the infertility treatments. Infertility isn't always due to the woman, about half the time, it's due to men. The test results diagnosed Richard with azoospermia. There might be a possibility of recovery with treatment, but it seemed difficult. Of course, I tried to report this to him. But he was already absorbed in his affair and wouldn't even talk properly. Well, even if he wasn't having an affair, I don't know if he would have listened to me. He had that little interest and love for me. Ironically, this moment became one of the few times Richard faced me directly. I don't believe it. This must be some trick by Michelle, right? Trying to frame me is useless. I don't care if you don't believe it. You will understand eventually. All I want is to cut ties with Richard and have him receive the appropriate retribution. Please sign the divorce papers quickly. You really mean that? It's a lie. Tell me it's a lie. While holding his head, Richard kept looking over the test results again and again. Mr. White and the in-laws could only sigh deeply. Anna seemed to deeply regret it as well. Leaving Richard behind, we moved away from the new house, and Mr. and Mrs. White went home to discuss. The in-laws then deeply apologized to me. Even though we didn't know, we couldn't see Michelle suffering. We don't expect to be forgiven, but this is how it is. We'll do whatever we can for you. Even if you divorce Richard, we will always be on your side. We'll make sure he takes responsibility, so just wait. There's no need for you two to apologize. I was also at fault for not consulting sooner and just going along with it. I also nearly caused you both a lot of trouble. Actually, I revealed a fact I had kept from my in-laws. They were surprised but chuckled ruefully, muttering. Richard brought this on himself, at my thorough preparation. Time passed, and after the divorce was finalized, I returned to my parents' home. It wasn't long before Richard, now my ex-husband, started bombarding me with calls. Of course, I knew why he was calling. So I deliberately ignored his calls a few times before finally answering. "What do you want, Richard? We're divorced now, so why are you calling?" You finally answered. You knew I was calling and ignored me, right? Never mind that. I'm in real trouble right now. I thought it was your doing, so I called. His voice held not a hint of composure. Even over the phone, I could vividly imagine his frantic state. I almost laughed, thinking, he's finally noticed. I decided to play dumb while revealing the truth. What kind of trouble? I don't know anything about that. Oh, but there is one thing I do know. The new house you bought turned out to be a defective property. I knew you knew it. Don't mess with me. I was too busy to notice earlier, but it's not even livable. What are you going to do about it? What do I do? I'm not doing anything. And it's not like you didn't notice because you were busy. You dumped the house hunting on me, remember? You were too late to notice because it was all on me, right? I just followed your instructions to find a house. You were the one who decided to buy it in the end. Isn't it strange to complain to me about that, Richard? When it came to buying the house with a yard, Richard made the decision on his own but left all the house hunting to me. At that point, I was already plotting revenge, which led me to ensure Richard would end up in a defective house. Identifying a defective property is easy with some internet research, checking for uneven floors, ceilings, and how the doors and windows function. I made a checklist and went to several viewings, choosing the property with the most issues marked. By Richard's reaction, it seemed my plan had worked. However, the one miscalculation was that Richard tried to move in with the in-laws without telling me. It was a close call that could have troubled the in-laws too. But now they live peacefully elsewhere without him. Michelle. I'm sorry for everything, so please help me out. I can't even think about moving because of the compensation payments. I had to quit my job, and there's the fertility treatment too. I really regret it. I should never have cheated. I should have cherished you more. So you finally realized it because you found out you're infertile? That's really funny. It's too late, everything is too late. All Richard can do now is regret and reflect, and start over. It doesn't involve me anymore. Wait, don't hang up. Weren't we married? Don't just abandon me like that. Anna has left me too. I've been disowned by my parents, and I don't have any relatives I can rely on. You're all I have left. Perhaps Richard truly was repentant at that moment, he certainly sounded desperate. But his desire to reconcile was for his own sake. In the end, he never thought about anyone but himself. After deceiving everyone around him, now he expects help in his time of need? I've never heard such a convenient story. I could have just hung up, but I felt compelled to say, Richard, I remember clearly what you said. A wife is an object I own. I'll discard her when I no longer need her. I really couldn't understand what you meant. Before being a wife, I'm a person. But now I think this, I don't need you in my life. It would be better if everyone abandoned you. My wish is for Richard to regret this for the rest of his life. Don't ever contact me again. Though I could still hear Richard's voice from the other end. I didn't care and hung up, blocking his number. He would surely learn that some actions in life are irreversible. As for me, I started living alone, working part-time, and enjoying my hobby of camping. Mr. White, having divorced as well, seemed to have more free time and joined me on camping trips. We've developed a relationship akin to comrades in arms, which I find quite comforting. Meanwhile, my in-laws continue to live peacefully, still showing concern for me. "If you ever need anything, just tell us," they say with a smile. The in-laws who stood by me that day are genuinely warm and kind people. Seeing them, I'm reminded once again, marriage isn't about hierarchy. It's about standing side by side and supporting each other. Your husband is dead, and you'll be going back to your parents' home, right? We'll live in this house then. Just after the funeral of my dear husband, who suddenly left this world, his parents, my in-laws, visited me as I was engulfed in sorrow. Though not many, this house is filled with memories of living with my husband. Why must I be the one to leave? But before I could even wipe my tears, my mother-in-law coldly stated this. "My name is Jenny. I work as an office clerk at a real estate agency." The meeting with my dear husband, Ted, was facilitated by the real estate agency where I work. He was the brother of my male colleague, and the two brothers were very close, often visiting each other since their workplaces were near. As I worked with him, I became friends with my colleague, who later became my brother-in-law. This connection led him to introduce me to his older brother. Gradually, as I was invited by the brothers to have lunch together, our time spent together increased. I recognized Ted as a bright and good man, but I had not considered him romantically. Nor did I think he saw me that way until one day, something changed. We were supposed to meet at a restaurant booked by my colleague. But suddenly, he couldn't make it due to urgent business. It seemed a waste to cancel the reservation. So, for the first time, it was just the two of us. I later learned that the brothers had conspired, with the younger brother arranging for us to be alone. The conversation flowed easily, enhanced by the delicious food. And we quickly found ourselves growing closer, sharing our backgrounds and values. The more I discovered about his inner warmth, the more I was drawn to his warm smile. This day marked a turning point in our relationship. And it didn't take long for us to get married. It wouldn't have happened without my brother-in-law's help, for which I am profoundly grateful. Then came the day to meet the in-laws. I was filled with anxiety, but they welcomed me very kindly. The considerate exchanges continued, and I found myself relaxing. "I'm really glad you could come. We've been looking forward to meeting you, Jenny. We hope today will be a good day, and we've prepared a lot of food." My mother-in-law said this, taking great care of me. My in-laws, like their eldest son, my husband, were very independent people and easy to get along with. I felt relieved and grateful for the enjoyable time I spent at my in-laws' home. We had many interactions, but my in-laws always supported our happiness, without imposing any ideas about marriage or children, maintaining a comfortable distance. Eventually, the idea of living together at my in-laws came up. But we had plans to build our own home. Actually, my grandfather left a house for me. As I explained, my in-laws listened intently and nodded. I was my grandfather's only grandchild, and he adored me, eventually leaving me a well-renovated house and land. He passed away after the inheritance procedures were completed. The land was nearby, and its value had skyrocketed due to redevelopment. However, I knew from my long experience in real estate that selling it, rather than living there, would be more beneficial for our ideal home plans. I was grateful for my grandfather's love, but since he had told me I could sell the house if I wanted, we had already considered selling it. After our marriage, we moved there. However, it was far from work, and living there, despite the good location, was impractical. As we planned the sale, a significant change came into our lives. My husband, a salesperson, was transferred. His company had branches nationwide, and he was the only suitable candidate. So refusing the transfer was not an option. I'll definitely come back on holidays. Plus, my parents will come to visit. It's no trouble, but could you take them out? That's fine, your parents are lovely people. But, it looks like selling the house will have to wait. So, my husband's solo assignment was decided because of my job. It was sudden, but I endured the loneliness and worry, waiting for the day we could live together again. As my husband said, on his days off, my in-laws, especially my mother-in-law, would often visit. She told me how she had endured loneliness many times while raising young children during my father-in-law's business trips. Even without children, you can nurture family memories. Why don't we go out together? Shopping can clear your mind. Let's go, Jenny. Thanks to my mother-in-law, I didn't feel lonely, and my holidays became busy. However, I gradually began to notice troubling signs. On my days off, my mother-in-law almost always invited me out. That was fine, but after a month, her invitations became more forceful, regardless of my fatigue or housework. I'd like to rest this week. If I said that, my mother-in-law would frown as if I were being selfish. But isn't it fun to go out together? Or do you mean to say you don't like going out with me? No, that's not it, but you've been taking me out every week, don't you need a break too? My mother-in-law looked sad. Even as I tried to clear up the misunderstanding, she refused to listen. Reluctantly agreeing, she would then burst into a smile and act as if she had never clung to me so persistently. My suspicions about my mother-in-law's behavior grew. The places she forced me to go were stores that led to high expenses. The shopping at brand stores and expensive meals continued, and I was manipulated into paying. My mother-in-law would often leave the store first, leaving me to handle the payments. She never thanked me for the payments, nor did she ever repay them. Indeed, I had a house and a decent salary, so I wasn't worried about savings. However, having always been frugal as a couple, I couldn't help feeling uncomfortable with my mother-in-law's extravagant behavior. It was the same when both in-laws were present. In fact, with my father-in-law joining, my burden only increased. I knew I needed to resolve this, but it was hard to discuss with my husband. He had said, "I will definitely come back on holidays." His branch office was very busy, and he rarely could return. I heard from Mom that you're going out every week. Are you managing okay? Doesn't seem like there's anything to worry about. When I video called my husband, I could see the bags under his eyes and his slightly thinner cheeks. His work fatigue was evident. I felt guilty about bringing up the issue with my mother-in-law, and ended up pretending everything was fine. Your mom has been really kind to me. Take care of yourself, Ted. I'm okay, so don't worry. While I misled my husband, I couldn't refuse to cover the expenses with my in-laws. However, their behavior escalated, and finally, when I said I couldn't go out one day, they said this. So, hey, could you lend me some money? What? I have to pay? Just a little bit, really just a bit. I've already booked the restaurant. I'll take another friend instead, so could you cover what I'm short? I wanted to refuse, but that would only complicate things, leaving no resolution. Resigned, I opened my wallet. But such attitudes were never shown in front of my husband. Why don't you ask Ted? I subtly probed my mother-in-law, to which she replied, it would be shameful to ask Ted. She thought it was embarrassing to ask her eldest son. So it was fine to ask his wife for money. I had given up on my mother-in-law long ago, and her demands for money had become a routine matter. At least, if I gave her some pocket money, she would stop forcibly taking me out. I knew the problem had escalated, but I was too exhausted from the inability to converse with my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law's actions became increasingly inexplicable and bizarre. At times she would arrive unannounced and survey the inside and outside of the house as if licking every corner, making me feel like my home's privacy was being violated. Are these furnishings left by Jenny's grandfather? They're wonderful. It's amazing that you can afford such luxurious items. Some of the furniture that remained was antique, favored by my grandfather. My mother-in-law seemed to like them, often coming over and admiring them as if they were her own. This is mine and my husband's house. I began to consider opening up about my mother-in-law's behavior. My husband might be surprised, but how wonderful it would be if we could think of a way to handle her together. Her actions are not pleasant. Invading privacy, even if we are in-laws, is wrong. However, at the same time, the duration of my husband's solo assignment was determined. If I could just bear it a little longer, he would return, and the in-laws mooching for money would end. A faint hope sprouted in my heart. My husband was working hard every day, so I just had to endure a little longer. I eagerly awaited my reunion with my husband, but the situation took an unexpected turn. What? Ted collapsed and is in the hospital? My mind went blank. The call came from a colleague at his place of assignment, and I hurried to the hospital. Perhaps due to his hectic schedule, he had suddenly suffered a heart attack. Ted was rushed by ambulance, but it was too late, and my gentle husband, whose health was his asset, passed away from a heart attack that no one could have anticipated. I couldn't accept the reality as I faced the funeral. I don't remember much due to the overwhelming sense of loss. My brother-in-law rushed over, handling most of the tasks. I'm sorry. You've lost your brother, yet you're helping me so much. It's my brother's funeral, of course I'd help. Besides, is everything okay with the land? Is the house ready? As we tidied up after the funeral, I talked with my brother-in-law and nodded, replying, all set. A few days after my husband's funeral, my in-laws came to the house together. It was clear they weren't here to console me. It's a pity about our son, but we're here, so don't worry. My mother-in-law's face oddly grinned. More shockingly, she had arranged a truck, and it was packed with furniture and belongings from the in-laws' house. I was too stunned and confused to speak. This looked unmistakably like a move. My in-laws were planning to move in without any discussion. What made them think this was acceptable? But the answer was clear. Are you after our land? Despite my confusion, I voiced the concern that had been in my heart. My mother-in-law smiled coldly. The land value has shot up quite a bit. We've had our eyes on this house for a long time. In fact, you got married to our son because of this inheritance. We allowed the marriage because you inherited it. I was overwhelmed with despair, at a loss for words. Are you saying you and I will live together? What? Don't say something stupid. As I asked confusedly, my mother-in-law's eyebrows rose. Ted's death was unexpected, but it seemed that even if he hadn't died, my mother-in-law intended to take over this house. My in-laws planned to oust me and take over the land themselves. They apparently assumed I would leave the house because my son had died. Your husband is dead, and you'll go back to your parents' house, right? This house will be empty, and it'd be sad, so we'll live here. That's why I'm telling you not to worry. My mother-in-law's grin twisted. I felt fear, but pointed out her mistake. The house has already been sold, though. I held back laughter at my mother-in-law's misunderstanding, unable to fully hide a smirk. In response, my mother-in-law froze. Just then, a different moving truck arrived. Sorry, we're here for the delivery to this house. A robust mover got out of the truck, and since another company's truck was there, he came to check with us. My mother-in-law's movers also descended, unable to start their work due to the arrival of another truck. Realizing something was amiss, they asked the in-laws for an explanation, but both were too flustered to respond clearly. Arguing with everyone there wouldn't solve anything. Seeing my panicking in-laws, I began to regain my composure and briskly directed the movers. This house has already been sold and the contract is finalized. A new family is moving in. So you can't bring their belongings into someone else's home, right? As the movers were shocked, a luxury car arrived, carrying a wealthy-looking couple and their children. The land was no longer mine, they were the new owners. My in-laws were even more confused, unable to grasp what was happening. Please move the truck quickly, the new residents need to start their work. After managing to get my mother-in-law's truck to leave, the movers began their work immediately, following the planned procedure to bring in brand new furniture. My in-laws, unable to accept this, started pressing me at the doorstep. The husband, the buyer, had his family take refuge in the car and came over to confront us, starting another round of confusion. Who are these people? We've bought this house. Please send the truck back quickly. I hadn't expected my in-laws to visit, so I apologized profusely to the buyers to soothe their annoyance. But my in-laws weren't leaving. Instead, they pushed past us into the house. Naturally, the inside of the house had changed completely. None of the furniture my husband and I had used remained. My mother-in-law was shocked by the sight and began to scream. What is this? The house is empty. All the antique furniture and lighting I liked are gone. What's going on? She couldn't understand what was happening and was outraged. When the residents finally shouted, "I'll call the police," my father-in-law, who had been flustered, ran and dragged my mother-in-law away to retreat. Once we moved away from the scene, my heated mother-in-law quieted down somewhat. First, I apologized to the residents, told that problems might still arise. I took down the in-laws' names and addresses to get some relief. Despite feeling a strong sense of fatigue, I still had explanations to give to my in-laws. I returned to them and calmly informed them that the move had been completed just days before my husband passed away. This house was always planned to be sold with the land, so it went according to the original plan. The solo assignment of my husband had put a temporary stop to it. But there was a reason things moved so smoothly afterward. My brother-in-law had backed our decision. I was bewildered by the change in my in-laws, who had even started asking for money. But I didn't want to worry my husband and couldn't discuss it with him, spending my days shut away. Noticing this, my brother-in-law came to my rescue. He had a bad relationship with his parents and had told me he'd help if I ever needed it. Not wanting to sour my marriage or my relationship with my in-laws, I trusted my brother-in-law, who promised to keep things confidential, and decided to confide everything. Upon hearing it, he was furious with our parents. As my husband's brother and my colleague, he understood their scheming well. For him, his brother Ted was his only family, and as Ted's wife, I was like family to him too. Our parents will eventually try to live in that house with you, or conveniently kick you both out to take it for themselves. According to my brother-in-law, both of my in-laws have a high-class mindset to the point of being out of touch with the real world. They are vain and unscrupulous. Especially my mother-in-law, who can appear as a lovely lady to the outside world. But in reality, she is mean-spirited and only thinks of her own convenience. Because he is blood-related. The episodes my brother-in-law shared about our in-laws were particularly intense. In front of my husband, the eldest son, they pretended everything was fine. So my husband likely never knew this side of his parents. In any case, my brother-in-law suggested that we should sell the land early to prevent it from being taken by my in-laws. I agreed with his opinion and decided to proceed with the sale. Even though the property was a precious inheritance from my beloved grandfather, I did not want its existence to become a hurdle for our marriage. Rather, because it was so important, I did not want to leave behind any troubles. Of course, I didn't decide this arbitrarily. I had discussed it with my husband while he was alive, and he agreed. At that time, he became aware of all my in-laws' actions. I hadn't wanted to tell him, but I couldn't complete the sale on my own. However, he fully understood my feelings and decisively condemned his parents' actions. I'm sorry I didn't notice. If Jenny is okay with it, let's complete the sale before my parents make a move. It's a shame, it's the precious house inherited from your grandfather. No, it's okay. Grandfather would agree to let it go if it meant avoiding trouble. I chose to sell the land not because of issues with my in-laws, but to protect my future with my husband. Regarding the sale, my brother-in-law, an expert in real estate, went out of his way to find the right buyer. My task was to find a new place to move to as soon as possible, and act naturally so my in-laws wouldn't suspect anything. The house was sold almost as new due to minimal wear from our living there, and this helped keep the price down. A buyer was found quickly, and the sale was completed smoothly. That was the family that had just arrived. I had originally planned to wait for Ted's return in our new home. He was pleased with the sale, and that was the only regret. The movers efficiently moved furniture in. Despite being kicked out, my in-laws just watched the moving process proceed. They didn't make a scene but couldn't just stand there forever. The movers they had hired were furious and demanded an explanation. As from their perspective, the booking of the move made no sense. I can't believe this is happening, this is a breach of contract. They pressured my in-laws, who fumbled their explanation. Eventually, the furniture had to be taken back, and it seemed they would be charged a substantial additional fee due to the unforeseen circumstances. Finally understanding what was happening, my mother-in-law, trembling, clung to me. This is the home of the eldest son's wife, so it should be our home, right? This situation is strange, isn't it? She tried to convince me with desperate excuses, but I ignored them and left only with my belongings. The land already belonged to the new family, and it wasn't mine anymore, so I had nothing to answer for. The funeral services for my husband, including the first 7 days of mourning, went smoothly. I encountered my in-laws there, and they seemed to want to say something about the house. But ultimately they left quietly without saying anything. I no longer had any obligation to communicate with them, so our interactions dwindled. I began to live peacefully, facing the sadness of losing my husband in the new smaller home we were supposed to restart our lives in as a couple. I had a considerable amount of savings from the sale, but now that Ted was gone, the plan to build our own home was no longer feasible. As I returned to work, I immersed myself in the few memories I had with my husband and gradually started to look forward again. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, particularly filled with unresolved grievances, seemed to be accumulating stress. I had not informed her of my new residence, wanting no further involvement with her. Unable to interact with me, her frustrations appeared to grow. She had always been pretentious in front of her eldest son, and now could not go to her estranged younger son. Not knowing my whereabouts, her stress compounded, and eventually, she lost her balance. One night, my mother-in-law resorted to a drastic act. She poured gasoline around the house that had been sold. Fortunately, a passing neighbor found her actions suspicious and restrained her before anything could happen. When the police were alerted, they found she had also prepared old papers and a lighter, and she was arrested for attempted arson. The homeowner, nearly having his property set on fire, was extremely angry when he realized that the woman who had caused a scene on moving day was responsible and insisted on pressing charges. I apologized repeatedly, expressing sorrow for the terrifying experience he faced. But I could do nothing about my mother-in-law's attempted arson. Ultimately, my mother-in-law's fixation on the house led to her being charged. I managed to get forgiveness by repeatedly apologizing, promising that such an incident would never happen again. Raised in luxury, my mother-in-law had always gotten whatever she wanted. When she couldn't have that house, her frustration turned into a warped jealousy, hating the house and the land, leading her to crime and eventually to prison. My father-in-law, who should have been a support, ended up divorcing her forcefully after her arrest, leaving her with no home to return to after her sentence. But that was the result of the path she chose. My brother-in-law, lonely after losing his brother, said, "I can bear it because I have a sister-in-law." Although the ties with my in-laws were thankfully severed, I hadn't lost all family. For the sake of my husband watching over me from heaven, I decided to spend my days peacefully. Please eat a lot. My mother-in-law said this with a smile, offering a plate in front of me. But I couldn't bring myself to accept it. Despite telling her that I have a severe egg allergy and can't eat eggs at all, she tries every trick in the book to feed them to me. Eating them could endanger my life. I tried to refuse, but she smiled brightly and said, "There are no eggs in this meal." Really? My name is Nicole. I'm a housewife living with my husband Patrick and our third-grade son Alex. We were living peacefully as a family of 3. But there was one thing I had to be careful about in my daily life. It is the fact that I have a severe egg allergy. When I was young, eating eggs caused hives all over my body and made the area around my mouth itch. After tests at the hospital, my allergy was confirmed. I tried eating a little bit under the doctor's instructions, but it didn't work. And although I was told that it might suddenly get better as I got older, it never improved even into adulthood. Therefore, I always have to be careful not to eat eggs. Having an allergy is not a bad thing, but it can be slightly inconvenient in daily life. When going out to eat, I have to look for restaurants that serve dishes without eggs, which makes me feel like I'm troubling my friends who dine with me, making it a bit of a hassle. My husband understands this and has said, "It's tough when the allergy symptoms kick in. I'll help as much as I can to ensure you don't accidentally eat anything harmful." I felt very relieved by his support. He mentioned that he saw a classmate suffer from an allergic reaction when he was young, and he couldn't forget it. Indeed, those who have seen an allergic reaction know how painful it can be. I prepare our meals at home, so I carefully separate my own food from that of my husband and son to avoid mistakes. When we dine out, my husband actively checks with the staff if the dishes contain eggs, which I appreciate very much. He said he doesn't want our son to grow up forcing someone with allergies to eat what they shouldn't. And he has explained my allergy to our son in a way he can understand. Thanks to that, our son quickly understood and said, "Mom can't eat eggs because it makes her suffer, so I'll keep them away." He shows consideration by pushing egg dishes away from me, which makes me feel happy about his growth. Our son loves his grandmother and always looks forward to seeing her. She also dotes on him and often calls, which becomes a break from his studies and homework. I am grateful to her for that. However, since my father-in-law passed away, the always smiling and kind mother-in-law has lost her energy and started saying, "I don't feel like cooking without my husband." After finishing our usual phone conversations, she always asks, "When are you coming back next?" I can't immediately answer, so I end the call by saying, "I'll discuss it with Patrick and get back to you." I really want to let our son see her as much as possible, but my mother-in-law lives deep in the mountains, a 3-hour drive away. So it's difficult to visit unless my husband can take a substantial break. So, we discussed it. "Hey, Patrick. About your mother. She's been asking when we can see her next on recent calls. She might be feeling lonely since your father passed away. I'm worried about her health, so can we make time to see her regularly?" After dinner, when things had calmed down, I brought up the topic. My husband said, "Yeah, I'm also worried about Mom, and I want to visit her more often. But I'm concerned that you have to be cautious about her allergy during meals. I told your mother about the allergy at the beginning of our marriage, so I don't think I need to be too nervous about it. Besides, we can solve it by bringing our own deli dishes. Alex also wants to see her, so why don't we plan a visit during his long school holidays?" At that time, I thought that my mother-in-law would surely understand what an allergy is and what symptoms it causes. When I suggested it, my husband agreed. So we decided to make visiting during the summer and winter holidays a regular event. When I told my mother-in-law over the phone that we would visit during the summer and winter breaks, she was delighted and looked forward to it every day. The next winter break, we visited her. That day, my mother-in-law entertained us with lots of homemade dishes, and both my husband and son's eyes sparkled. Initially, I told her that we would bring deli dishes because she doesn't cook much when she's alone, but she insisted on cooking, respecting her wish. My mother-in-law, with a joyful smile, seemed to enjoy cooking for others, while I was excited to eat someone else's cooking after a long time. I didn't want to cause concern by having an allergic reaction later, so I made sure to check if the dishes contained eggs. They seemed fine, and when I double-checked with my mother-in-law, she reassured me, "I haven't used eggs in any of the dishes, so it's safe." I gratefully enjoyed the meal. The homemade dishes were so delicious that I couldn't stop eating. And my mother-in-law was surprised but pleased, saying, "I'm happy you're eating a lot." While my husband and son and I were enjoying the delicious meal, the situation changed drastically 2 hours later. I started to develop hives and breathing difficulties, and although I had a bad feeling, I didn't have time to think as the symptoms worsened. My husband quickly took out an EpiPen from our luggage, which alleviated the symptoms. I was glad I had it with me, as I always take care to avoid eggs. And it had been a long time since I had such a reaction. Our son was quite surprised and immediately came over, asking, "Mom, are you okay? Aren't you in pain?" My mother-in-law was in the bath when the reaction occurred, so I didn't have to worry her unnecessarily. But I wondered why this happened since she had assured me that she hadn't used eggs in any of the dishes. Thinking I might have accidentally eaten something intended for my husband and son, I approached her calmly after her bath. I had an allergic reaction earlier, which wouldn't have happened unless I had ingested eggs. To avoid any dangerous mistakes, could you please tell me exactly which dishes contain eggs from now on? Her response was unexpectedly harsh as she glared at me, a look I hadn't seen before, and snapped, "You're just using your allergy as an excuse. You're just picky because you're too old to be throwing fits, so I tried to fix your attitude." I was stunned, and my usually gentle husband gave his mother a stern look, saying, "Mom, while you were in the bath, Nicole suffered terribly from hives and breathing difficulties. Allergies can be life-threatening. Could you please be more careful?" However, she was unwilling to listen, even to her own son. Instead, she dismissed the concerns, saying, "Everyone eats eggs. It's ridiculous to die from them. That just doesn't happen." My husband got angry to defend me, and she heatedly accused me of manipulating Patrick against her, saying, "You're turning my own son against me. What a terrible daughter-in-law you are." Seeing that further argument was futile, the matter was dropped. But my mother-in-law seemed to think her son had sided with her because he didn't argue back. Observing my silent husband, she smugly remarked, "No matter how much you defend your wife, in the end, you'll listen to your mother." I could tell that my husband was just dumbfounded and had nothing more to say. He suggested that we might stop visiting his mother, but she had always been kind to our son. Although our son knew about my allergy incident, he was unaware that his grandmother was the cause and still loved her dearly. I felt it would be unfair to completely cut off their interaction, so I proposed that I simply not visit anymore, though my mother-in-law kept insisting that I should come too. Deviously, she would tell our son to say, "Mommy, Grandma said you should come too." Unable to ignore my son's words, I reluctantly showed my face once in a while. During those infrequent visits, she continued to prepare dishes with eggs, but I managed to fill up on pickles and oatmeal. She noticed and complained, "Don't just eat pickles, try the dishes I've made too." I was desperately holding back the urge to shout at her, blaming her for my limited food options. Despite these thoughts, traumatized by my initial allergic reaction, I resolved never to eat her cooking again. I overate yesterday and my stomach hasn't settled. Maybe it's my age, but you can eat a lot, so you must be very youthful. I deflected, focusing on conversation to avoid being pressed to eat. I kept the conversation light, discussing our son's school and my husband's work, topics of interest to her. I continued to claim a lack of appetite at subsequent meals to avoid her cooking, which was becoming mentally exhausting. As the visits to my in-laws grew increasingly burdensome, my mother-in-law continued to call frequently, looking forward to our next visit. "Is it summer break next? I can't wait for it to get warmer." While I felt utterly fed up, I casually responded, "Spring will be here before you know it," dreading the countdown until our next obligatory visit. As busy days went by, summer break quickly approached, and we were due for another family visit to the in-laws. When we arrived, my mother-in-law greeted my husband, and son enthusiastically at the door. "Welcome, Patrick, Alex," but she barely made eye contact with me. I couldn't understand why she would insist on inviting someone she disliked. Although she was still cold to me, she continued to dote on our son, which was enough for me. My son, excited to share his catch from a fishing trip with friends, brought shrimp as a gift for his grandmother. "Grandma, I caught these shrimp recently. It was my first catch, so I saved them to bring to you," he said as he handed them to her. "Delighted," she exclaimed. "Oh, did Alex catch these? Amazing. Thank you," and happily took the shrimp to the kitchen. Usually eating only mountain-harvested foods, my mother-in-law was thrilled with the shrimp, a rare treat for her. Gifts from family were always appreciated, but something directly from her grandson seemed especially precious. I was relieved to see her smile. As she began preparing dinner, I followed her into the kitchen, boldly suggesting, "Mother-in-law, would you like some help cooking? I really enjoyed the meal last time and would love to learn your family recipes." While part of my intention was to learn from her culinary skills, my main goal was to ensure she didn't use eggs in my portion. However, my strategy fell flat as she promptly refused, saying, "I prefer to do the housework alone. I don't like my routine being disrupted, so please rest." Reluctantly backing down to avoid further annoyance, I left the kitchen. Once again, the atmosphere between us turned awkward. I planned to find an excuse not to eat dinner that evening. While pondering this, my mother-in-law approached and said, "Nicole, I'm sorry for scaring you with the egg dishes last time. I've been told off by Patrick because you always eat just pickles. I've made something different for you today, so it's safe. Eggs are definitely not included, so please eat with peace of mind." After saying that a bit abruptly, my mother-in-law quickly went back to the kitchen. Although I felt happy, I still couldn't trust her with the food, so I pretended to eat, saying, "Thank you for making a separate dish just for me. I'll enjoy it," and then discreetly passed it to my husband to eat. "It doesn't taste like eggs," my husband muttered softly, making sure his mother couldn't hear. Just to be sure, he went to check the kitchen and saw my mother-in-law taking a break, pulling tea out of the fridge. Seeing my husband, she casually mentioned, "Are you hungry? I'm about to make something for you and Alex, so just wait a bit." Then my husband exclaimed, "Ah, I found it." Rushing to the kitchen, I saw what he had discovered, eggshells that were clearly not yet dried, suggesting recent use. My husband was furious, confronting her. "Mom, what is this about? Did you put eggs in Nicole's dish again?" She seemed panicked, clearly not expecting to be caught. "No, it's not what you think. Those were from this morning. They have nothing to do with Nicole's dinner," she tried to bluff. However, I had checked the kitchen before she started preparing dinner, and knew there had been no eggshells then. "Please, just be honest with me. The kitchen was spotless before you started cooking, wasn't it?" I pressed. Finally resigning to the truth, she began to admit slowly, "I'm sorry. I thought if you could see the eggs, you wouldn't eat it. So I mixed them in without making them noticeable." Hearing this, I was too shocked to speak. The detail she described next was horrifying. She had minced the eggs into very fine pieces and mixed them into the meat, then colored it with sauce to conceal them completely. It saddened me deeply to realize she despised me enough to go to such lengths. Instead of showing remorse, she retorted, "It's rude not to eat what someone has prepared." With the atmosphere at dinner being incredibly tense, I realized it was pointless to argue further. I resigned myself to eating the shrimp Alex had brought, grateful for something other than pickles. Alex's shrimp are delicious. It's amazing that he caught such tasty shrimp. I attempted to lighten the mood. However, my shrimp-loving mother-in-law snatched my shrimp to eat herself, leaving Alex silent and upset. I felt terrible for ruining what could have been a pleasant time. I wondered if staying silent would have been better, overwhelmed with guilt. My frustration with her repeated attempts to feed me egg dishes, and the constant vigilance to protect myself had left me exhausted. My husband, having witnessed all this, suggested we leave. As we prepared to go, about an hour after dinner, my mother-in-law suddenly started vomiting and began shaking violently, with hives appearing all over her body. My son was crying, and my husband was shocked. But I quickly called an ambulance, suspecting an allergic reaction. At the hospital, it was confirmed that she had developed a severe allergy to shrimp. Fortunately, she wasn't in grave danger. But the incident had taken its toll on her energy. I asked her why she had tried so hard to hide eggs in my food, and she confessed she had thought my egg allergy was merely a dislike. She believed that hiding eggs in other foods would help me gradually get used to them and cure the allergy. She proudly recalled how she had helped Patrick overcome his dislike of vegetables by mixing them into dishes when he was younger. Frustrated with her confusion between dislikes and allergies, I arranged for her to hear directly from a doctor about the dangers of allergies. Can allergies really be cured by eating more of the allergen? When I asked the doctor, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Indeed, some people may outgrow their allergies, but this is mostly in cases involving children. There is a treatment method that involves gradually increasing the amount one can eat, but it should always be done under a doctor's supervision, with great caution. Moreover, in cases of severe allergies, it is extremely dangerous to eat the allergen based on one's own judgment." Glancing over at my mother-in-law, I noticed she was looking down guiltily, but I felt relieved that she finally understood. Following this, the doctor continued to educate her about allergies, and she truly began to comprehend their danger for the first time. Particularly impactful were the doctor's words. Deliberately making someone with an allergy eat the allergen is akin to attempted murder. The actions you've taken cannot simply be dismissed as disciplining your daughter-in-law or correcting dislikes. What you've been doing was essentially trying to kill your daughter-in-law multiple times. These words seemed to deeply resonate with her, marking a significant change in her understanding and attitude. In the hospital room, my mother-in-law apologized to me, saying, "I'm truly sorry for saying that you were just being fussy for not eating. I'm sorry for not researching allergies after hearing about your egg allergy. Now that I've experienced the terror of an allergy myself, I understand how serious it is, and I promise I will never try to make you eat eggs again." Experiencing these symptoms, which were the worst I've ever felt, has helped me truly understand how you feel. Having developed a severe shrimp allergy, which led her to vomit and almost faced death, she expressed regret for her past actions and apologized. Since then, my mother-in-law's harassment has stopped. This change was largely due to my son witnessing me suffering after eating egg dishes, which shocked him significantly. As a result, he grew distant from his grandmother, and we no longer visit my mother-in-law's house. I still find it hard to forgive her for everything she has done, so I feel it's okay not to visit for the time being. My mother-in-law occasionally calls and says, "It's very hard not being able to eat my favorite shrimp." Now, I have to check all my meals to make sure they don't contain shrimp. I didn't realize how difficult allergies could be, and she keeps apologizing. If she truly changes her attitude, I might consider visiting again. But for now, my priority is caring for my son, who had to witness his family members suffer from allergic reactions twice.
When the salesman at the luxury car dealership saw how we were dressed, he changed his attitude. "Are you sure you're in the right store? We came here to buy a car. Poor potato farmers. Get out. Go back home." His utterly unreasonable and arrogant response infuriated my husband. "All right then, we are leaving. Let's go, Diane." Yes. My husband and I left the store. This salesman, who looked down on us completely, would soon be surprised to learn what would become of him. My name is Diane Anderson, 52 years old. I run a farm that I inherited from my parents. Now that our children have their own families, it's just my husband and me. That said, our eldest son and his wife also farm with us, living not too far away. The vast northern lands with their clear air are where I was born and raised. My husband, Tham, who will be 55 soon, has completely adapted to this rural life as well. He likes it here even more than I do now and can't imagine living anywhere else. I'm very happy that he has come to love my hometown so much. However, when we got married, I never thought my husband, who was a company employee in the city, would take over my parents' farm. It has been 20 years since we moved here and started farming. I had moved to the city for university and stayed in the city for work, where I met my husband at the workplace. To be precise, he was working at the headquarters, and I was at a subsidiary, but we met through work when he was on assignment and started dating. Our relationship went smoothly, and we got married, of course planning to live somewhere commutable to work. His family being from the Northeast area, I intended to settle in the city. When I moved to New York, I had vaguely thought I'd return to my hometown someday, but I was the one who decided on my jobs and marriage. I went home every summer and Christmas, and I had no regrets. Our life took a turn in the 5th year of our marriage. Already blessed with 2 children, we were living happily, though busily, when I noticed something was off with my husband. He looked tired and was lacking in energy. He had lost his appetite. Although he used to go straight to see our children sleeping when he got home, he often forgot that and just stared blankly. "What's wrong? You haven't been eating much lately. Is work tough?" "Oh, sorry. I've been a bit busy and tired." "Don't worry about it." Even though he said that, I was concerned. When we finally had time to talk properly, the reason turned out to be a change of his boss. He had always had a smooth working relationship, but the new boss was prideful and mean, and for some reason, he picked on my husband, mocking and insulting him daily. As an employee, my husband said some unreasonable things were inevitable, but it was hard to see my kind and easygoing husband so down. Around the same time, I got a call from my mother at home saying that my father had broken a bone and was hospitalized. "We'll be in trouble because we can't farm for a while." Well, we have to manage somehow, but it's hard without the main support. "Is Dad okay?" While worrying about my father, an idea suddenly struck me. Why not start farming with my husband as well? Whenever we visited my hometown, My husband would say how great it would be to live amid such nature. I knew starting farming from scratch wasn't easy, but fortunately my parents were there. We could learn from the people closest to us. It felt much better than continuing to work under stress and endure at his company. Taking a chance, I brought it up with my husband, and he was surprised by my suggestion. I see. I'll think about it. I wasn't sure what he would decide since it meant moving and completely changing our lifestyle, but by the next day, he had made up his mind. I'll go along with your idea, Diane. Life is long. I want to work with a smile and pride for the sake of our children as well. Let's jump into a new environment. Thus, my husband and I moved with our young children and started a farming life in my hometown. My parents were thrilled to welcome their daughter and son-in-law who wanted to take over the farm. My father was a well-known potato farmer in the area, so not only did we get to learn agriculture, but his connections were also very helpful. However, getting used to the unfamiliar farm work was initially tough. We were covered in mud every day as we plowed the fields. Handling the machinery was difficult, and our bodies were our assets, leaving no time for rest. But my husband seemed happier than when he was an office worker. Even when I say I'm tired, it's completely different from when I was at the company. My body might be tired, but my mind is clear, and it's a good kind of fatigue, he often said. Because you suggested it back then, I am who I am today. Thank you always for supporting me, Diane, he would say. As time passed while we engaged in farming, both his mind and body regained their health, which made me incredibly happy. 20 years have passed since we moved. Originally, my parents' farm had a stable income, but now it has grown even larger, not only from what my parents and grandparents built, but also from the new ventures started by my husband. However, we didn't achieve this alone. It was done with the knowledge and connections inherited from my parents and the help of many people. One day, when we were buying an additional mini truck for farming, my husband suggested we also buy a new car for private use. The area is pleasant for drives, and there are many scenic places just a short drive away. Since we're at it, let's find a car we both like and go on many trips together, he said. He had already done some preliminary looking, and today we were going to choose the color and make the purchase. Excited, we headed to the city dealer. As we were about to enter the store, a salesman came to the entrance to greet us. "Welcome, dear customers," he said in a very polite tone, but his expression quickly changed to one of confusion when he looked up and saw us. He eyed my husband and me from top to bottom. Confused by the salesman's dramatic change, I remembered that we had come straight from the fields in our work clothes. That explained it. We didn't have time today, and we came directly after finishing our work. We were even still in our boots. Of course, we had washed our hands cleanly and, naturally, knocked off any mud or dirt as a matter of manners. Such attire isn't that unusual around here. The staff who helped us last time had no issues, but this salesman's reaction was quite exaggerated. Maybe he's new? He doesn't seem that young, though. Are you sure you're in the right store? The salesman blurted out the first thing. Yes, this is the right place. We came here to buy a car, my husband responded, and the salesman's eyes widened. Then he burst out laughing. Oops, my apologies. Do you even know how much our cars cost? Of course. We've looked at the catalog and came to see them the other day. Well, maybe you should start with buying some clothes first, like a jacket or a shirt. Those might be more within your reach than a car. We came here to buy a car, not clothes. If we wanted clothes, we would have gone to a clothing store in the first place. Well, we're here because we want to buy a car. We've even made a reservation to purchase one here. My husband, likely thinking the same thing, repeated his statement, and the salesman snorted dismissively. A reservation? Please, save the lies. I get it. Men aspire to luxury cars. But coming here in such filthy attire to a luxury car dealership? I can't sell to customers without money. His tone became harsher. What a rude attitude. Just because our clothes were casual, well, work clothes. But such a response was unprecedented. We can certainly pay properly. Talk is cheap. I was handpicked by the headquarters to turn this branch around. I'm the ace. I have an eye for customers. He boasted, looking at us intensely, then testing us with a question. Well, what's the most expensive thing you've bought recently? Let me see. My husband hesitated, exchanging glances with me, then answered, Oh, we don't really buy many things, but last winter, we took a family trip to Cancun for a month. That was quite a luxury. Yes, we invited everyone who's been working hard, and it was fun. We're discussing taking a domestic trip this winter instead if we purchase a new car here, I added, trying to shift the conversation back on track. The salesman burst out laughing again. Cancun? Even the lady is rich in fantasies. What a grand fairy tale. Let me guess, you work in agriculture? Yes, we mainly grow potatoes. When my husband answered with a smile, the salesman burst out laughing again. Exactly. You really do look like potato farmers. Potatoes suit you well. Saying this, he laughed uproariously. But our cars definitely don't suit you. I mean, expensive cars are out of reach for poor potato farmers like you. He gestured dismissively with his hand. I was finally fed up. Excuse me, your rudeness since the moment we arrived is unwarranted. We might be dressed like this because we didn't have time to change. But my husband indeed plans to purchase a car from here. Ma'am, you too, wearing a jumpsuit and boots. The ladies who come here usually wear brand dresses and jewelry. Well, brands wouldn't suit you anyway, but you could at least get your husband to buy you a skirt. At that moment, I heard my husband's demeanor change next to me. There wasn't actually a sound, though, but I could tell after all these years together. This egregiously rude salesman had now truly angered my normally calm husband. Unaware, he continued arrogantly, Look, poor potato farmers, just leave. Go back home. Is that so? I see. That's how you treat customers. Huh? We're leaving then. Let's go, Diane. Yes. My husband and I left the store. The salesman, who had completely looked down on us, laughed and said, We'll be waiting for your return. No, don't ever come back. He had no idea what was about to happen to him. As soon as we left the store, my husband pulled out his smartphone and made a call. It was probably to the manager of that dealership. or maybe even the regional manager. Not just the store manager, but my husband has connections with the regional manager as well. After all, our family has purchased dozens of cars from them over the years. Early the next morning, our doorbell rang insistently. When I opened the door, there stood the car manufacturer's regional manager and the salesman from yesterday. "Oh, Patrick, you came all this way?" "That's quite early." My husband spoke to him casually. "Mr. Anderson, I'm truly sorry for what happened. This man's mishandling has caused you great distress, and I apologize for that." The regional manager apologized deeply. Next to him, the same salesman looked perplexed. "What? You brought me here because of that poor farmer from yesterday? That annoying customer I told you about? All they did was joke about spending a month in Cancun in winter." The salesman said this carelessly, causing the regional manager's face to turn pale. "Jim, you've really done it now." "Huh? What did you do?" "A reservation for 20 cars has been canceled." "What? What are you talking about?" "That's what I'm trying to find out. Why do you think I dropped everything and rushed over here?" "Why would that be?" "Because of you, all 20 reservations were canceled, and they're even switching to another company for the trucks they always buy from us." The regional manager was holding his head. "If we lose business with Mr. Anderson, we're finished." "Wait, who is Mr. Anderson?" "This gentleman is the representative of the famous Anderson Vegful." "What? What do you mean?" "You don't know Mr. Anderson? He's the one." "No way." Mr. Anderson's company supplies vegetables to major corporations in the States. The potatoes for that leading potato chip brand, the tomatoes for that popular vegetable juice, and recently, their oranges and fruits have collaborated with trendy smoothie shops. "What? That trendy smoothie that celebrities are promoting and going viral?" It seemed even he realized the gravity of his mistake, as he exclaimed loudly, "Mr. Anderson has been a wonderful farmer for generations, but he has also been flexible in trying new initiatives, constantly improving his performance. He has contracts with renowned major corporations." "Huh, this guy." "There's no one in this northern land who doesn't know Mr. Anderson, including his predecessors." "So, the Cancun story too?" "Yes, it gets very snowy here in the winter, and there's not much to do, so we went to Cancun for a month with the family." "It's not just us, right? I think the Morris family went to Paris. Everyone works hard every day and deserves a reward during their time off." My husband and I responded cheerfully. "That's unbelievable. To come here dressed like that, it's inconceivable." "What's inconceivable is your distorted prejudice." The regional manager scolded him. "Well then, what have I done?" The man who had been boasting in front of us suddenly quieted down. Indeed, while my parents' potato farm had been stable in earnings, simply wholesaling crops was no different from before. With the changing times and the evolving American diet, it's said that agriculture's future is in danger if we continue without change. So, my husband and I began to think. First, we thought about how to transform unmarketable, ugly vegetables into saleable products. We started processing them into vegetable juices and sweets, or selling them as sets at a bargain with the slogan, ugly in appearance, but the taste is the same. The vegetables grown in our inherited fields taste excellent, even if they look imperfect. Initially, our goal was to increase sales and recycle vegetables, but this initiative was a big hit. A famous cooking researcher liked our vegetables. Once cooked, appearance doesn't matter. What counts is the taste, which is excellent for the price. He promoted us in his magazine column and on social media, and our value packs sold out in no time. We had to scramble to make more sets of the misshapen vegetables. Our original vegetable juices and dressings became hits after popular young actors and idols mentioned them as their favorites. Later, upscale urban supermarkets approached us wanting to sell our vegetables, leading to increased production and wholesale. Sales continued to grow, and we even opened our own stores. Over the years, we opened more stores, and now our son and his wife have also started selling online, which is doing very well. Thanks to everyone, our annual income has been in the billions for the past few years. By this point, my husband is more a business owner than just a farmer, though he cherishes being in the fields more than anything. "I'll always stick to farming," he says, leaving the business aspects to our son, his wife, and our trusted executives. Whether opening new stores or starting online sales, every new venture brought its challenges and busy periods. We truly owe a lot to our hardworking staff who spared no effort, even losing sleep. It's because of everyone's efforts that we have what we have today. That's why my husband thought of giving cars as special bonuses to our son and the team members who helped so much. And for Diane, who I appreciate the most, I want to buy a nice car, he said. So, the cars for everyone else had already been reserved. "Patrick, it's a pity. We trusted your dealership since my father-in-law's time, but we can't continue with such treatment from your salesman. I'm truly sorry." The regional manager apologized deeply while the salesman, pale-faced, began to fidget. "Mr. Anderson, I sincerely apologize for what happened. Please, don't cancel. Would you consider buying from our store?" "I refuse. You judged people solely by their appearance and profession, and even insulted my wife. I don't want to buy important cars for my colleagues from a salesman with such biased views. We've already arranged with another manufacturer." "What?" "We will no longer need your services." My husband cut him off sharply, and the salesman began to backpedal. "Fooling around. Coming to buy a luxury car dressed like that. It's absurd. It's your fault for not understanding time, place, and occasion, even coming in work clothes and boots. What are you starting now, you mere clerk?" "Manager, isn't that the truth?" "What?" The regional manager sighed deeply. "Mr. Anderson is exceptional, but there are many other wonderful farmers in this area. They are all our customers. It's normal here to come in work clothes." "What?" I couldn't forgive this man's disrespectful attitude towards my husband, and I told him off with a smile. It seems the one lacking common sense was you. After that, his bad reputation spread quickly. "That man doesn't know the common sense of the North. Hasn't he seen the greenhouse at Mr. Anderson's large farm? There are luxury cars parked next to the tractors. The Andersons have always loved cars." I heard there were many other customers he had treated rudely, and complaints had reached the headquarters. It turned out the salesman's claim I was handpicked by the headquarters to turn this branch around. I'm the ace was a complete lie. He had caused problems at his previous store and had been transferred here after causing a scandal involving inappropriate relationships. This only worsened his situation, leading to his dismissal for causing significant damage to the company. The scandal led his estranged wife to finally decide on divorce. As for my husband, the cars he recently purchased made our son, his wife, and our employees very happy. Seeing my husband's happy face, knowing everyone was pleased, made me even happier. From my own tough experiences as an office worker, I want to make sure that everyone can work happily. My husband often says, seeing everyone's smiles is the greatest joy and motivation for him. I deeply respect my husband for that, and I'm truly glad I dared to suggest we move all those years ago. Although starting in agriculture was challenging at first, all our hard work and efforts now feel rewarded. Our business continues to thrive, and our sales keep growing. We are currently brainstorming products that even children who dislike vegetables will enjoy eating. And next week, our new car will arrive. Where shall we go in our new car? Munching on potato chips made from our own potatoes, I looked at my husband's smiling face.
My name is Tracy Manning. I'm 33 years old. It's been 3 years since I married my husband, John, who is a year older than me. We've struggled to have children, so we decided to start fertility treatments. It was during this challenging time that I discovered my husband's betrayal. What is the meaning of this? Were you both deceiving me? The notification on my husband's smartphone was how I learned of his betrayal. Yes, my husband was having an affair with my real sister, Katie. And that wasn't all. Actually, Katie is pregnant with my child now. So, I want a divorce. What? Katie was pregnant with my husband's child. Those were the last words I wanted to hear. You're kidding, right? Why would you do this? Sorry. I knew you were undergoing fertility treatments, but it just happened. It's still early in the pregnancy, so we don't know the gender yet. But here, this is my ultrasound. This image shows our child. Isn't it cute? The ultrasound photo Katie handed me showed a very small life. Looking at that photo, I trembled with anger. Don't joke about this. You never helped with the fertility treatments. To do something like this behind my back. It's too cruel. The joke's on you. What about me is joking? Normal women get pregnant without fertility treatments, like Katie did. And yet, you haven't gotten pregnant even once in 3 years of marriage. Fertility treatments aren't free, you know. All the tests and treatments. Do you have any idea how much of my money has gone into this? I never wanted to support that. What's so wrong about leaving a woman who can't get pregnant and going to another? Excuse me? Tracy, you've been overindulging because he works for a major company on the fast track to success, haven't you? What? I think marriage is about helping each other. But if you ask for too much, it becomes a burden, right? John told me, there's no rest even when I come home. Weren't you pushing him too hard with the fertility treatments? Honestly, I think his affair is your fault. As he said, you can't complain if he goes to another woman. You say I was pushing him. John has never. Katie is right. Being with you was painful for me. I want to be happy with my new family. I'll pay whatever it takes for compensation. Just sign these divorce papers and get out. Looking down on me with disdain, the two of them were too much to bear. However, holding on to this marriage wouldn't bring me happiness. Understood, I accept the divorce. With that, I signed the divorce papers, took the compensation, and left the house. That was about a year ago. After learning the truth, both of our parents were furious, of course. However, they eventually resigned themselves to accepting the two's marriage since Katie was already pregnant. Since then, I've cut ties with them and blocked all their contacts. I don't know where or what they are doing now. Then, one day, something happened. Hello? It's your sister. Are you doing well? A call came from an unknown number, and it was surprisingly my sister. Why would you go out of your way to contact me from an unknown number? I blocked you because I didn't want to communicate with you. What? Are you still angry? Don't sulk forever, just come and celebrate with your sister. Celebrate? Actually, the child that was in my stomach back then was just born. That's why I want you to come and see. Why should I? This child is genuinely your niece, isn't she? Sure, we've had our differences. But forget about the past and come see your cute niece. Despite everything, my sister brazenly invited me to meet my niece. She probably wants to show off that she is everything I ever wanted. Normally, I wouldn't accept such an invitation from her. However, after some thought, I decided to accept her invitation. All right. I've had something I wanted to tell you too, so this is perfect. When should I visit? Oh, then, how about next Saturday? Next Saturday, then. I'll bring a gift when I come. Okay. My sister seemed a bit surprised that I accepted her invitation. But she didn't ask why. However, she would soon deeply regret inviting me home just to show off. And just like that, the promised day arrived. Welcome. My sister greeted me with a beaming smile as she came out of the house I once lived in, holding her newborn niece, who was sleeping peacefully in her arms. The milk just finished. Come on in. The first thing I saw when I entered was my ex-husband, whom I hadn't seen in about a year. His disdainful look hadn't changed. It's been a while, Tracy. Have you been well? We've been really busy every day since the child was born. But we're truly happy. I know it must be tough being alone. But I really appreciate that you accepted the divorce. Thanks. That's a bit much. It would be sad for Tracy, who is single now, wouldn't it? She even came today, enduring the hardship. The two of them mocked me as they spoke. By the way, what's the gift you mentioned on the phone? Is it inside that paper bag you're holding? Since having a child, I've realized how expensive it is to raise one. My husband works for a major company, so we still have some leeway. I think you should be prepared too. Well, unless you get the chance, considering your divorce was due to infertility. That's when it happened. The doorbell echoed throughout the room. There weren't supposed to be any other visitors. My sister, puzzled, opened the front door. And standing there was. Excuse me, I think my wife might be here already. Huh? This is my husband. What? Yes, the person who arrived was my husband. Both my ex-husband and my sister were shocked by this fact. I came by car, but couldn't find a parking spot, so I dropped off alone first. Did you find a parking spot? Yes, someone nearby showed me where to park. That's good. Wait a minute. You got married? Yes. When? About 3 months ago. Why didn't you tell me? Why would I? After what happened, we cut ties. I didn't think I'd need to tell you. And I never thought I'd be invited here. But why would such a tall, handsome man be with someone like you? Where did you meet? Well, that's a story for later. Can we come in for now? We haven't seen each other in a while, so there must be a lot to catch up on. Right. And so, we were led into the living room again. Wow, nice living room. It's fresh compared to ours. Is that so? Yes, our living room is combined with the dining area. Hearing this, my ex-husband smirked unpleasantly and said, "Living and dining together means it's not a very big house." Stunned that I was married, my ex-husband seized the opportunity to assert dominance. And he continued to try to one-up us by saying, "As you might have heard from her, we used to be married. This house was bought during that time." Well, there were some stretches. But I think I'm the only one in our age group who owns a house this big. Is that so? It's indeed a big house. You seem quite young and very successful. Yes. Well, do you know Company A? Everyone knows this major corporation. I work there. But I just handed in my resignation. Actually, I've secured a job at Company B, which is even bigger than A. Originally, Company B is a stable, large corporation. But it's been growing a lot recently, so I decided to join the wave. I actually start working there next month, but anticipating a salary increase. I bought a new apartment in the city. I'm planning to move the week after next. So, if you like, shall we sell this house? I hate to say it, but it seems like you're not living very well. She's my ex-wife, and I think there's some kind of fate in this, so don't hesitate. Right? It's okay, isn't it, Katie? That sounds fine. But, isn't it a bother to sell such a house to someone who isn't living well? Well, that's true. By the way, what do you do for work? Ah, it's nothing significant. Did it become hard to say after I mentioned my job change to Company B? Don't hold back. I'm not expecting much. My ex-husband said this and laughed crudely. Is that so? Then I'll speak without hesitation. Excuse me? I came here today because there's something I need to tell you. What is that about? Don't you remember me? We've met once before. My ex-husband pondered. Since you don't seem to remember, let me introduce myself. I am Robert, the executive director at Company B. What? Yes, my husband is the executive director of Company B, the company to which he planned to transfer. Looking at the business card my husband presented, my ex-husband and sister turned pale and were at a loss for words. Why would the executive director? Normally, I would notify you by phone or in writing, but I heard about it from my wife. I decided to come here with her. Notification about what? Then, my husband told him. Mr. Manning, I regret to inform you that we have decided to rescind your job offer. A job offer cancellation. Why? Do you have any idea why this might be happening? I have no clue. I've lived my life earnestly and have always been diligent at work. I believe I was highly regarded at Company A, respected by both my superiors and subordinates. I can't imagine why you would suddenly cancel my job offer. Ignoring my ex-husband's confusion, my husband gave me a knowing look. I took the cue and pulled out a document from the paper bag I had brought and handed it to my husband. What is that document? This document contains the reasons for the cancellation of your job offer. Before you read it, are you sure you have no idea why your offer might be rescinded? I think not. All right. Please read through this document. Handing over the document. My husband watched as my ex-husband hesitantly began to read. Gradually, his face turned ashen. Why, how could this be? We received reports from our employees about an account leaking information about companies A and B on social media. This account also posted confidential information only someone from company A would know, as well as vulgar remarks about female employees and other indecent content. The account listed in this document, it's yours, isn't it? His job offer from company B was cancelled because of the content he had posted on social media weeks ago. What? Information about our company is being posted on social media? After receiving this report from a company B employee, my husband immediately checked the social media, and their unbelievable posts were made. Finally got the job offer from company B. Time to say goodbye to company A. Some still doubt I work at company A, so I'll show them the project plan. I designed all these products. You guys must have bought them too. Here's the department head's pay slip. Found it in the hallway, so I'm sharing it. Here's a photo of the women's changing room. Since I'm quitting, it's probably past the statute of limitations, right? Honestly, the interview at company B was a breeze. Looks like I'll be able to climb the ladder easily. If anyone's curious, once I join company B, I'll post their info too. It seems there were numerous other posts including degrading actions towards female employees of company A and derogatory comments about women. Too appalling to mention here. Shocked by the extent of the misconduct, my husband reported it immediately to the CEO. The CEO then ordered an investigation to find out who made these posts. It turned out that the person who had posted them was him, who had just secured a position at company B. Subsequently, the senior management was summoned for a meeting. The topic was, naturally, about Mr. Manning's job offer. We hadn't yet posted much about company B since he hadn't actually started working with us, but there was significant posting about company A. Employee salary details and images from a women's changing room he had sneaked into. Even actual project plans he was working on. Moreover, these were not posted on a private social media account, but on one accessible to the public. The spread of these posts was substantial enough to be considered malicious. And for these valid reasons, the decision was made to rescind the job offer. Hearing this, my ex-husband and sister were pale and speechless, mouths agape. As I mentioned earlier, this is usually communicated by phone or in writing, but my wife suggested a proposal. Yes, Mrs. Manning suggested we come to your house since she was invited. So we came together. Indeed, the reason I accepted my estranged sister's invitation was that I had heard about the cancellation of my ex-husband's job offer from him. So, you found out who was leaking information to company B. It appears to be someone who had received a mid-career job offer from us. This person had also been leaking confidential information from their previous employer, company A, and honestly, it seemed pretty serious. So, the person in this document is the culprit? Let me see. Yes. The document contained a familiar name. Wait a minute. John Manning, is it? Could this be this person? I showed a photo of my ex-husband that was still on my phone to him. Why do you have his photo? Well, I don't know how to put this, but he's my ex-husband. We divorced a year ago after I caught him cheating with my real sister. What? Thus, it was confirmed that the perpetrator who had been leaking information to Company B was my ex-husband. A few days later, by some coincidence, my sister invited me to their house. Truly, I was shocked. I got the call just a few days after hearing such a story from my husband. I had no intention of going initially, but I accepted the invitation thinking it might create a chance for them to talk. But it turned out to be a great decision. Desperate to assert dominance by inviting me to her home, my sister ended up embarrassingly exposing her own disgrace in front of me. And couldn't say a word, just looking down in silence. So, do you understand the reason for the cancellation of the job offer? I understand. But it's different. Excuse me? It wasn't meant to be taken that way. It was just a joke. I was egged on by my followers, and I posted it in the heat of the moment. There was no deep meaning behind it. Mr. Manning, that is precisely why your job offer was rescinded. It was just for fun, just a joke. There was no deep meaning behind posting it. The casualness with which you broadcast confidential information about the company to the world is unacceptable. We cannot employ someone who might casually leak our confidential information in the future. If this were an already employed staff member, they would be fired. Do you understand? That is, the posts were discovered a few days ago. We took immediate action. This account should already be frozen. Didn't you think something was odd at that point? I thought someone who was offended by the posts might have reported them. I had no idea that Company B was aware of the posts. I hadn't imagined. Is that so? But we were not the only ones who took action. Huh? Afterwards, we naturally informed Company A as well. They suffered more damage than us, after all. Such a thing. About Company A. They were furious. I'm not sure about the details, but I think they'll file a police report and claim for damages. You should expect to receive some kind of communication. So please handle that on your end. Hearing the words police report and damages, my ex-husband turned even paler, then said, I know this is a brazen request, but could you possibly reconsider the cancellation of the job offer? It would really put me in a difficult position if my job offer from Company B is rescinded. Difficult? Yes. As I mentioned earlier, I got carried away when I received the job offer from Company B and prematurely bought a new apartment in the city. So if the job offer is rescinded, I won't be able to pay for the moving expenses or the mortgage, and I'll be out on the street. I'll accept anything but the job offer being rescinded. So, please, I'm begging you, too. As you can see, we have a newborn daughter. We could manage somehow on our own. But if things continue this way, our daughter will suffer too. So please, forgive him for what he did, please. The two of them said this and begged forgiveness. However, reality isn't so lenient. My husband gave them a sharp look and said, Truly a brazen request. You can't pay for the new house's mortgage if the job offer is cancelled? You and your child will end up on the street? Is that our concern as employees of Company B? So, that is. You know it's brazen, so please don't make such requests. Even if you beg me, there's nothing I can do. This decision was made by the entirety of Company B. You've brought this upon yourself, so please just accept it. That's all I can say. A sound argument that left no room for rebuttal. I thought this would make him recognize his fault and give up. However, His actions far exceeded my expectations. So that's it. I see your plan. Tracy, this was your goal? You got involved with the executive director of Company B to get back at us for betraying you. What are you talking about? You were jealous of my fast-tracked career and plotted to ruin me by finding my weakness. That's right. Incredibly, he started accusing me of getting involved with him and trying to sabotage his life because I was spiteful about being betrayed. That's ridiculous? What misunderstanding is this? No, there can't be any misunderstanding. It must be true. Seeing him like this, my sister also said. Now that you mention it, it does seem odd. After all, Tracy divorced about a year ago, right? And now she's already remarried? That's suspicious. She started attacking me. You accused us of having an affair, but were you having one yourself? That's not the case. Yeah, right. They say women are better liars than men. Women really do filthy things. All my social media followers say it, too. Women are not to be trusted. Look at her, acting all innocent. This hypocrite. Driven to desperation by being told he couldn't be hired by my husband, he resorted to insulting me. However, my husband didn't remain silent. Hypocrite? Isn't that what you are? What? I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but please don't equate your relationship with ours. What are you saying? We met after she divorced you. I was invited to a drinking party by a friend, where I met Tracy. I later found out that the party was organized by the friend to cheer Tracy up after her terrible breakup with you. There, we clicked. And soon after, we started dating. And so, we quickly decided to get married. That's why our relationship isn't shameful like yours. What? He's right. If you calm down and think about it, you'll see the contradictions in what you're saying. Me, approach him to get revenge on you? I only found out you had a job offer from Company B recently. So, how does it turn out that I approached him to get revenge on you? If I had approached someone related to Company A, maybe, but your accusations are baseless. So, that is, can you stop projecting your guilty conscience onto everything? Our sharp rebuttal silenced my ex-husband. Seeing his reaction, we decided there was nothing more to discuss and began to leave. However, don't joke. Doing this as revenge against us? I will never forgive this. Enjoy it while you can. Be prepared. As we were leaving, my sister hurled these harsh words at our backs. Hearing her outburst, I turned around, smiled at her, and said, "Isn't it you who should be feeling good? It seems like a certain secret hasn't been uncovered yet. Lucky he's so oblivious. What are you suddenly talking about? What do you mean? Don't you know very well what I'm talking about? What's wrong? Why the pale face? And what secret are you talking about? Hey, remember? Back when we were still married. When we first started fertility treatments. You also had tests done at the hospital, right? What does that have to do with anything now? Why bring up fertility treatments here? It is indeed a bit late, but it's an important issue. For you. What? Aren't you curious about those test results? You acted as if the results had nothing to do with you, didn't bother to listen. Since then, you've assumed infertility was a woman's fault. You never doubted that it was you who was infertile. What are you talking about? The doctor clearly said. The cause of the infertility was not me, but you. That having children would be nearly a miracle. What? I'm the cause of the infertility. That's impossible, that's ridiculous. Because infertility is supposed to be a woman's issue. Indeed, many people mistakenly think all infertility issues are caused by women. But just as often, men can be the cause. Not all infertility issues are due to women. But I have a daughter. If what you're saying is true, my daughter is. That's just nonsense, right? You're just jealous and making this up because you couldn't get pregnant. Who said I couldn't get pregnant? Actually, I'm pregnant right now. What? It's still early, so we don't know the gender yet, but here, this is my ultrasound. This image is of our child. Isn't it cute? The familiar scenario left them both pale and speechless. Well, they never said it was impossible to conceive, maybe a miracle happened. So, why all the insinuations? Why? Maybe you should ask your sweating wife next to you about who the father of the child is. That's. Tracy, are you implying my daughter isn't mine? If it turned out to be true, hiding it forever would be difficult, wouldn't it? Maybe you can't tell now, since she's just been born. But don't you think you'll start to feel something is off as she grows? Especially since they say daughters often resemble their fathers. My words left the two of them frozen. Well, we'll be leaving now. Thank you for having us today. It was nice to see you after such a long time. Take care. With that, we left. It goes without saying that the moment we stepped out of the house, the sound of their yelling could be heard from inside. Several weeks later, I received a call from an unknown number. Hello. Tracy. It's me. As expected, it was my ex-husband. What do you want? I'm busy, you know. After that, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. And got a DNA test done for my daughter. And it turns out she isn't my child. We're not related by blood. Is that so? And when I confronted her about it, she confessed. She was trying to trap me, someone working at a big corporation, by getting pregnant. But she couldn't conceive, and ended up pregnant with another man's child she was seeing at the time. I was aware of my sister's scheme and that it would eventually come to this. The job offer was rescinded, I had to sell the new house. Plus, the daughter isn't related by blood, and I've divorced her. My parents have cut ties with me because of everything that happened with you. I've lost everything in this past year, all I have left is debt. This must be the punishment for betraying you, Tracy. What should I do now? My ex-husband was probably expecting me to console him. But I chose not to meet his expectations. That's right. What? Exactly. This outcome is all your own doing. A punishment for acting only in your own self-interest. To think you'd expect consolation from me, that's pretty brazen. Accept your fate and live with it. Goodbye. Wait a minute, hey. According to what I later heard from our parents, my sister returned to our family home with her child, but my father, deeming her behavior too audacious, turned her away. With nowhere left to go, she tried to turn to the child's father. But that didn't work out either. She's probably leading a life far removed from the one she had imagined, struggling alone.